Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a good, relaxing weekend. We have great news for you, folks. We can finally take a deep breath because now all of the transfer portal process is starting to unfold. Notre Dame fans can kind of take that sigh of relief. And now the offseason is in full swing. Notre Dame has transfer portal commits. And that's how we're going to kick off today's show. We're going to start by talking about the transfer portal, who they've gotten so far, what are kind of the next steps here. We're going to break down each player, what they mean to the team, the Notre Dame fit. We're going to break them down individually as players. Part two of today's show, we're going to be talking about CJ Carr. It was our friends over at FanDuel released their kind of like way too early Heisman odds for 2026. And we're going to break down where CJ fell in that. Had an article come out about it this morning to the surprise of probably nobody in this chat. CJ Carr is held in pretty high regard. And then we're going to wrap up today's show with a mailbag, folks. So a lot of things happened really in the last 6 hours. So if you want your questions answered, get those in. MB for mailbag. Mailbox emoji lets us know to set that question aside. But Brian, everybody can finally take a deep breath and relax. Notre Dame has transfer portal commits. This is a good day, man.
Yeah, I mean, some of these have been done for a few days. Keon Keeley's been done for a few days. DJ McKinney's been done for a few days. Basically, what happened? We'll explain what happened there the other day when we get there. But look, I think there's some more that are done. Quincy Porter was one that Notre Dame really had to close well on, and we'll get into that. But look, here's the deal. There's things that we're going to be able to discuss at some point in time in the near future, Trevor, about what went wrong in this process and how things didn't go incredibly smoothly and things along those lines. However, as we said, let's let the process play out because this is still Notre Dame and this is still Marcus Freeman as the head coach. And you still have Mike Mickens and you still have Mike Denbrock and you still have, you know what I mean? Like they have money, that's not necessarily an issue. I don't think they always handled some negotiations well with the GM, but we'll explain all that. We'll explain why they took this player, why they took that player and have some fun with it. But I don't think they're done. I do think there's at least two more position players that they are trying to close on. Actually, no, one more because one of the two that I had mentioned earlier has now since committed in Jaden Sanders. But, there's at least one more that I feel good about, but it's not done yet. There's a couple other spots that they're still trying to maybe add a guy, but really the big ones that they got so far outside of D-tackle, they've gotten done. And then, of course, the big news, Trev, and we can kind of kick off with this. The big news that I was really happy about, and I got word on, it was Thursday night, I think it was, maybe Friday. But I got word that Armell Mukam was going to come back. And so it's funny because like yesterday I'm sitting around all weekend. They were supposed to announce it on Saturday. It didn't come out Saturday. They weren't sure when it was going to, the people I'd talked to weren't sure when it was going to get announced. And so I'm waiting all weekend for it to get done. And then, yesterday afternoon, I get in my car. I'm going to the grocery store that's only 5 minutes away from my house. And of course, what does Notre Dame do or what happens? That news gets announced. I swear Notre Dame's got a camera in my house. Whenever I get in the shower or leave, they publish news. I swear, man, it just works out. So I called Trevor and I was like, hey, man, can you publish the story that I wrote a few days ago about Armell coming back? So I think that was a big one, too. And while it's not technically a portal pickup, I think getting him back changes the portal needs. And that was big for Notre Dame. And we'll kick. I think we need to kick things off with that, Trev, because that change, like I said, changes the needs. Now you really only need one D tackle. And it gets you back a guy that arguably, and I would say along with Chris Burgess, who I expect to move to D-tackle, is one of the two most just naturally physically gifted players on the D-line, D-tackle, of the returners. Now, obviously, you're going to have some new guys in, but I think getting Armell Mukam back was a great kickstart to the weekend and something Notre Dame absolutely had to do. The way that he got in the portal, we can just briefly say it. He was told coaches wanted him back. The coaches were excited about him. And they're talking to him about, you got a chance to be a starter. You're going to do all this. We're expecting big things from you. And then he got his pay, from last year cut significantly from what he was making down to a pretty low number. And I think Armell viewed that as a lot of players view that as like, well, you're now, you can tell me all you want that I'm going to be a starter and I'm going to have a chance to do this. But when you give me this offer, and my agent's fielding offers from 3-4 times that from other schools. Like, what, you know what I mean? And I think it was bungled, to be honest with you. And one of many of these situations that has happened with Notre Dame and the GM, where coaches want a guy back, GM gives them a low ball offer, and then that's led to some hard feelings. But at the end of the day, I think Armell understood this is still the best place for me. The Notre Dame coaches continue to go after him. This was not Armell having a change of mind. This was the coaching staff having to mend some fences, and Armell realizing Notre Dame is still the best place for me. He's a year away from getting his degree. I think that was huge for Armell. And if you looked at the schools he was looking at, it was like Northwestern and I think Georgia Tech. I mean, he wanted to go somewhere to get a good education because he's a smart kid. But I think he understood that. And I think this is one where getting Charlie Partridge helped as well. And here's what I mean. I think Armell had a very good relationship with Al Washington, and I know Al Washington was very high on him, Trev. You and I have talked about that. But I think that having sort of a new selling point, a change of circumstance, because he didn't get in the portal because of Al Washington. Like, that's not why he jumped in the portal. But I do think, that Washington is still going to be at Notre Dame, but then you bring in a new D-line coach who's got the NFL reputation, who's someone that, I'm confident that it was made. I was confident that I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. I'm confident that it was made aware, that Mukam was made aware of how high Charlie Partridge is on him as a player. And I've known that for almost a year. And I think it was, actually about 7 months. I had a conversation with a coach at Notre Dame this summer, and we were talking about Armell. And he's telling me a story that Charlie Partridge was at practice because he knows Chris Ash and he knows the Notre Dame coaches, and was in Indianapolis, coached against Notre Dame a bunch of times, and he was at practice. And he goes up to the defensive staff and he's like, you guys got a big-time sleeper future NFL player on your D-line. And, of course, the Notre Dame coaches are like, you talking about, BY? And they're like, no, I'm talking about whoever 88 is. And he's like, that kid's he's raw. Still needs a lot of work, but that kid's got NFL ability. And I'm pretty sure that Armell was made aware of that. And so I think that, combined with the fact, like I said, he does have a good relationship with Al Washington as well, was something that really factored into Armell's decision to come back, on top of the fact that I know his teammates wanted him back, the coaches wanted him back, and he's a young man that values education. And I just think that was a must get. You needed Armell Mukam back, Trev. You needed to get him back.
Yeah, without a doubt. The move to bring him back and him electing to return to South Bend completely changes the outlook of the room for the defensive tackle room. Like, it's kind of like what Jaden Greathouse means to the wide receiver room, mending some of the fences, him agreeing to come back. Now, obviously, he never went as far to enter the transfer portal, but getting Jaden Greathouse back changed the outlook of the transfer portal for the wide receiver room. You can't go into a season with only Jordan Faison. He's a very talented player. He's going to mean a lot to this offense. He's foregoing playing lacrosse with his brother to solely focus on football. That's a big deal. You need more than that, though, especially if they want to go from contender to champion. That being said, what Armell Mukam did for the defensive tackle room is very similar in that regard. Completely changes the outlook. He's a very high ceiling player, someone that you and I have been extremely high on the last couple of seasons, flashed in the opportunities against first-team offenses that he had this year. Very excited to see what Charlie Partridge does with him. Very excited to see what he does with a bigger sample size. I love the move to bring him back, and I love the fact that Armell wanted to continue his career at Notre Dame. So definitely a good start. Again, like you said, it's not necessarily a transfer portal pickup, even though he was in the portal, but mending that fence might be bigger than some of the other transfer portal news that they've done in the last 8 hours.
Yeah, it was crucial. It was crucial because there's still obviously a need at D tackle in this portal class, but it went from 2 to 3 to, in my opinion, now 1. I think moving Burgess, if that continues to happen, will obviously be part of that as well, answering those needs. But there's talent there, and Armell is one of those guys that has the most talent. And Trev, I talked about this in the article that I wrote about him coming back. I said, if you look at his numbers, Armell played, I think it was like 15 snaps the first like 8 games of the year. That's it. And then he played, I think, like 44, something like that in the last 4 games, including some first half snaps in some of those games. And his numbers were very good. He had 4 pressures in the final 4 games on limited snap. I think it was 4 pressures on 27 pass rush snaps, and then he had 3 run stops in 27. He had 54 because it was 27 and 27. He had 27 pass rush snaps and 27 run snaps. And in the 27 pass rush snaps, he had 4 pressures, and in the 27 run snaps, he had 3 stops. If you project those numbers over the course of an entire season and you just give him the same number of snaps that Jared Dawson had, he would have had more pressures than Jared Dawson. And then he would have had, actually, I'm going to pull that article up, and then he would have had 16 run stops. Well, for context, he would have, let me just pull it up here real quick. So I got this number right here. He would have had the 27 pressures he would have had 27 pressures and 16 run stops. So put the pressures in context. The only 2 people that would have had more pressures than him on the team is Bryce Young by 1 and Boubacar by 4. That's it. His 16 run stops would have been, I think, second on the D line behind only Boubacar if he just played the same number of snaps as Jared Dawson. Now, that doesn't mean he would have done that, but it just shows when he was in the game, that's the level of production he gave in those last 4 games. So I think the light is starting to go on a little bit for Armell. Now it's going to be up to Charlie Partridge to get the most out of the talent. And it's going to be up for Armell to kind of take his work, I'll say work effort. I would say his focus and sort of just overall work volume kind of up to that next level and truly understand what it takes to be a great player, because I do think he has the potential to be that over these next couple of years. I really do. So that's why I think getting this back was important. And look, we said this in the beginning, like, what do you want to do, D-tackle? You and I kept saying, get Armell Mukam back. That was a big thing. And so I think that's going to be that was very important and obviously a great place to start for Notre Dame in the portal. And I always want to talk about the Notre Dame kids first in these type of situations, and it just changes the whole dynamic at D-tackle. Now you're in a situation where, Francis Brew is out there. They're trying to close on him. There's other schools. There's a bit of a, bidding war going on there because he's a pretty hot commodity in the portal. But if you can get him, that's an if. I'm now very happy about the D-tackle position moving forward. The process was poo, and we'll talk about that when the whole thing is over. But at the end of the day, if you're able to get Brew with Armell coming back, I think this is. I think Brew. Tell me if you agree with this, Trev. Before we move on to the other guys, I thought his film last year at Pitt was better than I thought Jared Dawson's film was in 2024 at Louisville.
Yeah. Yes. His film at Louisville, agreed completely. Yeah. I thought you were getting ready to say Jared Dawson's 2025 film at Notre Dame, and I was like, I don't know about that. No. I was like, I like Francis Brew, but I don't know about all that.
No. Better than his Louisville film. And then Al Washington took Jared Dawson to another level.
Correct.
And I think Charlie Partridge is going to have the same ability to do that with the guys he's going to get, which is good.
Absolutely. And hopefully they're going to be able to close. Like you said, the process was poo, and it goes against what – No, I love it. And it goes against kind of Marcus Freeman's philosophy for the program, but now they have to be results focused. He talks about the process. Well, that bag was fumbled, unfortunately. Now you just have to do what you have to do to be results driven. And hopefully that continues. But today doesn't take away from the momentum that they've really generated over the last couple of days, obviously officially announced today. But the next portal pickup that we're going to talk about here, folks, is the big-bodied wide receiver from Ohio State, Quincy Porter, the 6'4", 210-pound receiver. He also announced his commitment. That went public earlier today as well. Got the graphic from Notre Dame's department, I think, put it up on his Instagram. So he is going to be playing in South Bend in the 2026 season. And this was one of the receiver positions, because there were others that bounced around, other names, and some of them were kind of already fits in the room. Like you already had that type of fit in the room, I guess would be a better way to put it. What you didn't have was a 6'4", 210-pound boundary receiver. So this is another big pickup. It fits the need for Notre Dame's wide receiver room. love the fact that Quincy Porter is going to be playing in South Bend.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's talk a little bit of background. Obviously, Quincy Porter's from Bergen Catholic in New Jersey, was a big-time recruit coming out of high school. He was, I think, he was a 5-star player by both On3 and 247 Sports. He was the number, I think, 13 overall player and number 2 receiver in the class. In the 25 class, he was number 31 overall player by 247 Sports. He was a consensus top 100 recruit, and he would not give Notre Dame really the time of day. I think he made like a spring visit, and that's about it. He just wasn't interested in Notre Dame. And you understand why. He wanted to go somewhere that's going to throw the football. Obviously, very attracted to Brian Hartline and what they were doing at Ohio State. What helped Notre Dame with this, there was 3 things that really helped Notre Dame in this one. Number 1 is they can compete NIL-wise. Like, that was not going to be an issue for them. Number 2 thing is, well, really 4. The number 2 thing is Brian Hartline leaving. The number 3 thing is he was still going to be buried behind Jeremiah Smith for a year. And then the number 4 thing is the view of the Notre Dame offense amongst recruits was very different than it is now. And so I was told actually that Notre Dame was kind of really starting to push for Reed Harris and was starting to get some traction there. And then when there was word kind of got to them that Porter was going to jump in the portal, they immediately changed gears and went after Quincy Porter. So I think that was an interesting development as well, Trev, because you and I were kind of talking behind the scenes, like, look, right now everybody's talking about Arizona State, and I think that's probably where he's leaning, but there's some interest there. I talked to another buddy of mine on the beat. We kind of talked about that. He heard the same thing, that there's some people at BC were starting to say, like, hey, I think there's some legitimate interest there. And then, of course, we hear he jumped in the portal within the last week. So, and somebody in the chat said that was a gamble. Agree completely. But here's why they were willing to make that gamble, because they like the room they have. And if they missed on Porter, they felt that we're going to be okay because we like what we have. And so they kind of put all their eggs in that basket from a boundary receiver standpoint. You know what I mean? And so there was a lot of other legitimate contenders, but Notre Dame was able to get this done. I believe that the coaching staff played a big role in this as well, selling the vision to him of how he fits into the offense. And the big thing about the offense being different is I was told, by a couple different people, and I know others have reported this, that CJ Carr was a big part of this as well. He wanted to go somewhere where he fit the offense and was going to be getting thrown to by somebody who's a legit quarterback. And that played a big role for Notre Dame as well. So, and look, Reed Harris, I think, was basically going to be a one and done. And getting a guy in Quincy Porter that's going to be here at least 2 years is huge. Now, he did suffer a knee injury late in the year. He'll probably miss the spring. I was told it's not like a severe thing. He'll be back in the fall. He'll be fine in that regard. But this was a big one, to your point, Trev, because he brings that 6'4", 210-pound body. You go watch the film of when he played this year in Ohio State, caught 4 passes for 59 yards, but you could see it. You could see 2 things. One is he was, still trying to learn a complex system. But you could see when he was confident in what he was doing, he still got that long speed. He still has those hands. You go back and look at his high school film. He was an impact player in high school. His last 2 years at Bergen Catholic, I think it was like 98 catches for 1,938. Let me go look at that number. I have it down here. Yeah, 1,938 yards and 27 touchdowns, which is 19.8 yards per catch. People keep asking me, what's the comp? And honestly, the best comp I have is he's Malachi Fields. I mean, that's really how his game fits. Now, there's some differences here, and he's not as advanced and polished as Malachi, but he's pretty well coached. He was pretty well coached coming out of Bergen Catholic, and then obviously spent a year playing for Brian Hartline in Ohio State. So he needs to improve his release technique. That's the biggest thing that I see from him technically. He doesn't use his hands well. He doesn't attack leverage the way that I want to see him attack leverage. Sometimes he'll just kind of go outside. If like a corner's playing inside, he'll just go outside, which is what a corner wants you to do when he's playing inside leverage, is just go outside. That'll be something that they'll need to work with him on. But outside of that, Trev, his top ends are really sharp. He attacks the ball with his hands. He understands once he's squared up with the defender, he understands, leaning and snapping off and accelerating out of breaks. And he's a very good contested catch player in high school. Yes. There's a ton of potential here. And so when I compare him to Malachi, it's like, is he like Boykin or Chase Claypool? And I'm like, well, neither. He's got a little bit of Miles and a little bit of Chase. And you know who is that player? Malachi Fields.
Yeah.
And so I think he brings a lot of what Malachi brought to the offense, with the exception of the experience. And he doesn't have quite as much of the grown man strength that Malachi had last year as a fifth-year senior. That'll come. But as far as he can run go routes, post routes, catch back shoulders, run digs, catch over the middle of the field. And unlike Reed Harris, who Trev, was my number one target, desire in the portal prior to Quincy Porter jumping in. But Reed Harris was just a to-the-catch point guy. I mean, that's what he was going to do. He wasn't going to do anything really after the catch other than just run away from people if he caught a ball. What I like about Quincy Porter is he brings some after-the-catch ability to the table, like Malachi did. So I think this was a great pickup. I know there's a lot of talk about Mylan Graham, and, he's still on the board. I think it's between Notre Dame and going back to Ohio State. I'd take Mylan Graham in a heartbeat if you got him, but to me, they've got Mylan Grahams in the roster. I think that's what Cam Williams can be. I think you've got, obviously Jordan Faison, Jaden Greathouse, Elijah Burris. You're bringing in Caden Finley, Bubba Frazier, Braden Robinson. Mylan Graham's a heck of a player, and I would never say no to him. This one, that's a luxury pickup in my opinion. This one was the need, on top of being, in my opinion, the higher ceiling player between the two. And so I think this was huge for Notre Dame to make this one happen, like absolutely huge. And I know he didn't play a whole lot last year. It's because he had Jeremiah Smith in front of him. But this is a big time talent.
I love this pickup for so many different reasons. One, for all the reasons that you listed off. He's a spectacular prospect. He has a very wide catch radius. The one thing that I really appreciated about him from an athletic standpoint is typically with like 6'4", 210 guys, especially that are young, they're kind of tight-hipped. They don't move as well. Quincy Porter doesn't really have that issue, to your point, with his ability after the catch. But I love this for what this means for Notre Dame's program. I have been, I guess you could say, critical of Mike Brown up to this point, depending on the topic that we're talking about. And it would have been very easy to go get some 3-year starter that was just a big body that fills the just boundary need. And it's like, hey, we got a 6'4" guy. We got our boundary covered. Check. He's played 3 years at Kennesaw State. We're good to go. Let's ride.
Or Boston College.
Right. The thing that I love about Quincy Porter is Mike Brown is still going to have to do a lot of work developing him. And when I mean a lot of work, I don't mean because he's bad or because he's a project. It's because he played 57 snaps last year as a true freshman. Micah Gilbert is a redshirt freshman, doubled him up, played 114 snaps. So it's not like they got that, because Brian, what was one of our concerns going into the portal window? It's like, it's very easy for a lot of coaches to get lazy and to put development in the back seat while they can just go get this big name. Like, hey, on 3, this is like the number 3 wide receiver in the portal. He's out of the box, ready to go. Let's ride with this guy. We've seen Notre Dame do that before. Bo Collins, Malachi Fields, Will Pauling, things like that, while development for some of the younger guys seemingly took a back seat. The thing I love about this pickup with Quincy Porter is you're still going to have to do work with him and develop him the same way that you're going to have to continue developing Cam Williams and Micah Gilbert, Logan Saldate, and Elijah Burris, and the incoming freshman class. This completely changed the outlook of the receiver room for me. I'm with you. Mylan Graham, it's more of a want, not a need. With that being said, I still want him in South Bend.
I mean, honestly, here's where I am on Mylan Graham. It's not that I want him. It's not that I don't want him. I think there's guys there that I'd rather coach up. If he wants to come, great. You don't say no. But I'll just leave it at that. Just for me, I get you said what you want. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, my thing is, I don't, I'm just at the point, Trev, where I'm like, there's guys in the room that are really good that I want to see them coach up. But I think your point, I didn't even think about that, Trev. That's such a great point, though, that Notre Dame took a kid who's extremely talented, but still needs coached up and still needs to kind of, learn sort of like what is the work ethic needed to be an elite receiver? What's the focus level needed to be an elite receiver? Let's clean up some of these things, his get off and different things like that. And he's a good blocker, like from an effort standpoint, but obviously he's in high school was able to just kind of bully people. There's things that you see on film where it's like, okay, he's going to have to improve his footwork and sink his hips a little bit. He was too tall at times in blocking, or he wouldn't take great angles, but very willing blocker. So I don't think that's going to be an issue at all. But it's just it's more raw. You got to coach it up, and so they went with talent over readiness. And I think that's smart at a position like receiver. I do think it's smart. So I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the table.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yep.
Speaking of talent, getting up to the next guy that Notre Dame brought in from the transfer portal, also announced today, former Notre Dame commit Keon Keeley is coming back to South Bend. This time he will be playing for Notre Dame in 2026. The 6'5", 282-pound Alabama defensive lineman is coming back. And I put out an article the other day just talking about what Notre Dame needs to do on the defensive side of the ball to go from contenders to champions. And one of the things was a more dominant edge rush in the postseason. Now, I think we would have seen that this year. I think we can all agree that if Notre Dame made the playoffs, we would have watched Carr and Bryce Young and Josh Burnham really put on that performance that we were wanting to see. Unfortunately, that's always going to be an unknown. But we believe that this 2026 team has an extremely high ceiling. Now, I know we're going to talk about it in part 2 about what FanDuel thinks about CJ Carr and how they view him heading into the 26 season. But I also believe that FanDuel is going to be very high in regards to Notre Dame as a team. Going to be one of the very early odds-end favorites to win the national championship at 26. And having a dominant edge rush is going to be that. Now, at the top, you still return both of your starters in Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore. But adding an exceptionally talented player like Keon Keeley, and he's going to get the opportunity to learn under Charlie Partridge as well.
Yep.
Very excited to see what this kid can do in South Bend.
Look, I'm not expecting Keon Keeley to show up and just look like what he was going to look like had he signed with Notre Dame. But I think it's important to just say this. I said, and a buddy of mine reminded me that, like, hey, I heard you say that, because I was talking to him, but he's like, I remember you saying that. I said at the time, I think the world of Keon as a young man, and never bashed him for, oh, he's this. And I told people, like, this was not an NIL move for Keon. Did he get NIL money from Alabama? Of course he did. He also got NIL money from Notre Dame. I think he got some bad advice. I think he kind of got caught up in the playing for Nick Saban and being developed a Nick Saban thing, which I understand. But I said then that I don't think Keon is going to excel at Alabama. So I'm not shocked at all that Keon hasn't looked like what we thought Keon was going to be at Alabama. And there's 2 reasons why. Number one is I've always felt that Keon needed a place like Notre Dame from a structure standpoint. I think it's very, like, I think part of it was like, okay, getting away from a school that's different, that's different than Berkeley Prep. And it's not, that's a small school, private school, academic oriented school. And I think Keon, went to a place that was a public school. It's a party school. And I don't think that he needed he needed the smaller environment. He needed the academic structure. He needed the discipline. He needed somebody who was going to kind of put a foot up as what, and really get him locked in, because he had that in high school, in his high school coach, who's very much that way. And I just felt he, as a young man, needed that. And a lot of people are that way. I needed more structure coming out of high school, and I didn't realize that I did until, I got to, I used to tell my players when I was a coach, I would talk to my freshmen first semester, and I'd talk to them about the imperative of starting their careers off on a good note academically. And I'd say this to them, Travis. I said, listen, I had a 4.0 as a freshman. And they're like, oh, that's sweet, coach to say. I got a 2.0 in the fall and a 2.0 in the spring. You know what I mean? And the point was, I had to spend the next 3 years recovering from that, not just academically with my GPA, but also the bad habits that I formed now that I wasn't living at home, and my dad wasn't making me do my homework and wasn't making me, stay out of the girls' dorm instead of focusing on my schoolwork and things like that. And out of the film room and weight room and going out and throwing instead of, finishing up the paper I had to finish up and things like that. I needed that. And I think Keon needed that. And there was some growing up he needed to do. And I felt Notre Dame was the place for him to do that. I think part of his desire to come back to Notre Dame is because I think Keon's realized that. And I think he has done some growing up, and I think he understands that. The other reason, football-wise, is I never thought he was a good fit in that defense, in the Saban defense. He was a tweener. He wasn't really an outside linebacker. He wasn't a defensive end. They put a lot of weight on him. He got up to over 280. I think that's too much for him. He lost. I mean, even with the weight, you can still see that first step, though. You know what I mean? Like, you go back and watch, and I just never felt like – and then Saban left after a year, and I think the current coaching staff really does a poor job developing defensive linemen. I mean, you watch film. I was watching the Oklahoma film, and I mean, just lineman after lineman hitting the wrong gap. And the only reason they were able to shut Oklahoma down is because A, Oklahoma's offensive line is terrible. And B, because they're just talented. They could just kind of out-talent Oklahoma a little bit. And then Oklahoma had some missed opportunities in that game as well. But, there's a reason they fell behind 17-0. They're just not a real disciplined defense. But you watch Keon play in that game, and you're like, they don't know how to really use him. He's playing 4-eye-1 snap. He's playing like a heavy 5-3 down look on the next snap. And to me, he needs to be doing exactly what Javonte Jean-Baptiste did. He needs to be doing exactly what Bryce Young has done at Notre Dame. Be that edge player that's 265-ish, 270 at the very most. He should be 270. I'd get him down to like 265. Let him be a true edge. Let him come off the line 100 miles an hour. Let him be a guy that can blow up edge runs. Let him be a guy that can be a really solid, stout edge run defender, and then a guy that can get after the quarterback. And I still see it there, Trev. I went back and watched film, and I said to myself, listen, Brian, don't think about what he was at Berkeley Prep. Don't think about what you thought he was going to be. Evaluate who he is now and make sure that the talent is still there. Because sometimes, Trev, when kids put on a bunch of weight, they lose that athleticism, and it doesn't come back. And you have to be honest with yourself that that's a possibility. But when you watch the film, it's like, dude, the burst is still there. You go watch the Georgia game. You go watch the Oklahoma game. You watch even the Indiana game, and he was one of their more impressive linemen in that game. And you say to yourself, the talent is still there. He's too big, and they don't know how to use him. You get him to Notre Dame. He fits the system way better. They've had success with guys like him, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Isaiah Foskey, this past year, Bryce Young. They know exactly how to use a guy like Keon, and hopefully they can get some of that weight off of him and help him get a little bit of that agility back. But you watched it late in the year, Trev, and you could see the length is still there. He's got strength. He still has that twitch. If he can be focused and if the coaching staff can really work with him, I think you can get him back on track to being an impact player. The goal for me for Keon this year is get him back on track, get him in the rotation, let him be sort of that third edge that can sub either guy, and let him kind of learn how to be a difference maker behind Bryce and Boubacar. Then in 2027, it's like, okay, now when Boubacar's go off to being a first-round draft pick, now Keon and Bryce are on opposite ends with Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Tade behind him and Logan Thomas. And now you're like, okay, I feel so much better about the future of the defensive end spot moving forward now that Keon is part of this for the next couple of years.
I was just about to say, man, this is an elite bridge player. And what I mean by that is if you didn't get him, there was a chance, depending on what this team looks like. I'm not also naive to the fact that Bryce Young could also leave after 2026 if he has the type of season. Now, I think he's going to come back for 2027. That's not me putting something out there. It's a possibility because he'll be draft eligible. And if we think Notre Dame does this season what they're capable of doing, he could also go. That's a possibility. Now with having somebody like Keon Keeley in the mix, I think that is an excellent, just elite high-end bridge player. So then if, worst case scenario, Boubacar Traore and Bryce Young both leave after the 26th season, you're not relying on potentially two redshirt freshmen. I think they're both going to play. At least one of them won't be a redshirt freshman going into 2027. You just never know. Adding somebody like Keon Keeley is a fantastic get. Love the depth that it adds. It makes the question of losing Josh Burnham. Now, is he going to come in and have the immediate impact that I think Josh Burnham would have had in 2026? I don't know. That remains to be seen. I love his game, though. He reminds me a lot of Kayvon Thibodeau and what he did at Oregon. Very similar body types, both 6'5", both long, super twitchy, very similar games. Now, I don't think he's going to come in and be what Kayvon Thibodeau was in 2021 for Notre Dame's defense in 2026. Going to take some time. Brian, you said it perfectly. Sometimes with players like that have different types of journeys, sometimes you got to build or you got to break them down a little bit to build them back up. Break them down fundamentally so they have a better opportunity at reaching their ceiling a lot quicker than what some might be. But you and I were texting the other day when we kind of got word that this was going to happen. When you got word that this was going to happen, you called me and we talked about it. And I was like, man, I'm just picturing a world where Notre Dame's edge rotation is Boubacar, Bryce Young, Keon Keeley, Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Utade. Man, like Logan Thomas, man, that is ridiculously talented. Ridiculously talented.
Here's the thing for me too. This is partly why I'm glad that they're bringing in Charlie Partridge. And this isn't a shot at Al Washington because we've sung Al Washington's praises, but it's like the timing of it is good now because there is so much turnover. I mean, you lost Josh Burnham, Jordan Patelho, Junior Chilamaka, Gabe Rubio, Jared Dawson, Donovan Heinisch, potentially Jason Onye. You have 7 of your regulars are out. This is a transition that gets Al Washington at linebacker, gets him in a position to where his resume has – it's kind of like D-line coaches are kind of like running back coaches and cornerback coaches where they're just kind of viewed as specialists and they don't get as many of the D coordinator opportunities and head coaching opportunities that linebacker and safety coaches do. And so that move works for him. But now there's a new voice for a new looking room who brings some different aspects from a coaching standpoint to where he can kind of add some tools to the arsenal of the returners, but then can take all these new guys and kind of, build them up in a specific way. And I'm excited about this move. And to your point, I mean, I think the new voice is going to help young play the returners. But then I also think Charlie Partridge is exactly the kind of coach that a guy like Keon Keeley needs and a guy like Armell Mukam needs and a guy like Bryce Young needs to kind of take what was built upon by Al Washington and then build on it and take it to another level with these guys. So very excited about that. And I think that, the way that he coaches will fit what Keon needs. And I think that's going to work out really well. Really, really well. I think Keon and Bryce Young are both going to benefit greatly from this year of development and things along those lines. And so, again, Al Washington laid a great foundation, and now it's up to Charlie Partridge to take it to the next level, which would have been the expectation for Al Washington if he was still the D-line coach. But, Charlie Partridge is walking into a situation where, they led, they led the country in D-line pressures last year. And, now it's okay. It's up to you guys to take it to that next level and start to maybe, do a better job of getting sacks and getting more hits on the quarterback and things along those lines would be to benefit them a little bit as well. So I'm happy about this pickup, and I think the fit is there, and I think it's going to be good for Keon as well. And it's the best shot he has of turning things around and getting back to being the guy that you and I knew he could be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the biggest fears that I always have, and this might just be me, but whenever you have a highly touted recruit coming in like that, somebody that's committed, that's a 5-star, one of the top in the country in his recruiting class, you always wonder if in the back of their mind, they sit back and wonder if the grass is always greener on the other side. And for Keon, life experience, there's no more valuable lesson than just kind of going through life. And for Keon Keeley, that's what he got. He went and saw it. It's like, okay, I went to Bama. I went to Nick Saban's Alabama. I went down to the SEC. Growing up, I was a kid. Everybody told me that, that's where the premier players go. And you go to the SEC, you go down south. And he got to experience that. It wasn't a fit for him. And so it's a full circle kind of moment. Love the fact that he's back in South Bend. I hope nothing but success for him in this defense. And I think that's also a better fit for him rotating with Bryce Young. I love that fit. And I love that potential rotation there. Let's move back a couple of levels on defense, Brian, because a couple of the other portal pickups they got both live in the secondary. Mm-hmm. First one we're going to talk about is the Colorado defensive back that they picked up, CJ McKinney. Now, first 2 years of college, played at Oklahoma State, He transferred to Colorado in 2024, started alongside Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner on that defense in 2024, then was one of their premier defenders this year. Battled a little bit of injury towards the end of the season, missed the final 3 games, but he's another high ceiling kid. He fits the physical profile of what Mike Mickens has typically brought in the secondary. Very excited to see what DJ McKinney does in this secondary, man.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting pickup. You look at DJ McKinney and what he was at Colorado, 6'2", 185, type of player, long arms, stronger. When I popped in the film, stronger than I thought he would be, to be completely honest with you, Trev. I didn't think he was going to be as good of a tackler as he was, especially in 2024. So his 25 film was not as good as his 24 film, and a lot of it had to do with technical prowess. He was not nearly as consistent and proficient from a technical standpoint. And honestly, the entire defense was that way. They were not a very well-coached defense, though. The last 2 years, really. They weren't a very well-coached defense in 2024 either. It just got worse this year because they didn't have the same level of talent. And you kind of watch it, Trev, and it's like, okay, these guys are, in a lot of instances, I hate to say it, they're just getting by on talent. And they're going to have to really learn how to play, with use his hands better, use his feet better. He tends to overplay, really aggressive outside jabs, like on slants and things like that. But overall, you see a guy that's got really good natural coverage instincts. He's relatively smooth for a 6'2" guy. Like he's not like as smooth as Leonard Moore. He's not doesn't turn quite as well as Cam Hart. But he's similar to. I think Cam's probably the best comparison that you have from a Notre Dame player, because he's not quite as fast as Leonard Moore, but he can run. He at Colorado they played right and left, and he was usually the right corner. There were times in 24 they'd put him at left corner, but they would leave him there. So he has experience playing field and boundary. And at Notre Dame, he's just going to play one. He's going to play field, I believe, is where they're going to put him. And, so I went and watched about 3-4 games earlier today and really studied his film and watched some the other day as well when we first got word that this was going to go down. And so what you've done is you've kind of solidified your cornerback depth chart from an experience standpoint. Now, I think there's going to be some other moves that get made, but at the end of the day, you've got some veterans and then a bunch of young guys. And what Mike Mickens has always preached, I want competition and I want depth. And as we've seen, injuries happen, and you want to make sure you have some guys that can go out there and play. And so I think what he brings to the table is and I'm not going to speculate on like who's going to move around right now. There's another time and a place for that, but I don't think it's just status quo for everybody, and then you're just going to kind of plug him into the depth chart. I think they're going to say, hey, how do we get our best 5 on the field? That's what I think Notre Dame is going to do in 2026. And obviously DJ McKinney's got to come in and show that he can be that kind of player. But last couple of years, Trev, you look at the production, and he gave up 253 yards in 10 games this year. He gave up 315 yards last year, began his career at Oklahoma State. He was a starter for Oklahoma State in 2023. So this will be his 4th year as a starter. So this is a kid with a ton of experience. This is a kid that's played over 2,000 career snaps in Power 4 football, because he started his career, played 2 years at Oklahoma State, redshirted as a freshman, played 2 years at Colorado. And now he comes to Notre Dame and he'll play 2 years, obviously, or he'll play for a year at Notre Dame. So, I think there's a lot of talent to work with. And having played with Travis Hunter in 2024, he understands the pressure that comes with being opposite a star cornerback. And obviously that's going to play a little bit into that as well. But, you look at his production this year, he allowed, let me pull it up here again real quick. He allowed, according to Pro Football Focus, 253 yards on 18 catches. Last year, he allowed 315 yards on 37 catches. So he allowed 8.5 yards per reception. That's better than what Leonard Moore was 2 years ago. Actually, both of the last two years, he did some things a little bit better than Leonard Moore, including keeping people out of the end zone. He's not a Leonard Moore player. But you look at last year, Leonard Moore, Leonard Moore, this is a freshman, allowed 11.3 yards per attempt. He allowed 293 yards on 26 carries. So I think this guy brings some of those attributes to the table. This year, Leonard Moore allowed a 54.2% completion rate. 2 years ago, DJ McKinney only allowed a 52.1% completion rate. Obviously, he's playing field and boundary. The last 2 years, Christian Gray. This year, Christian actually had a very good completion percentage allowed rate, 49.2. 2 years ago, he was 58.8. So overall, his numbers are very similar to what Christian Gray is, except he didn't allow as many catches as what Christian allowed. And so I think there's some work there. I think he can play boundary if they need him to. He can play field if they need him to. He's done both because they do play left, right at Colorado. He's a pretty instinctive player. And then the other thing too is he mixed up between zone and man a lot at Colorado. They didn't just play him in zone. They didn't just play him in man. The reality is Chris Ash wants to play cover 3, more. And he plays some cover 2. Well, I hate, as a quarterback and an offensive coach, I hate long cover 2 corners. Hate it because it's so hard to throw over top of them into some of those cover 2 hole windows. And then he's, as a cover 3 corner too, he also brings a lot of range. He can squeeze down on seam routes. He can drive to the ball. He's a harder guy to throw over the top of. So I think those are things that you look at and say, this guy brings a lot to the table. I think the most yards he's allowed in a singular game, I think, is 65 this year. And then he had one game of over 80 last year, 86 in game 4 against Baylor. And then after that, the rest of the year, his next highest yards allowed total was 39 yards on 4 catches. So he did a lot of good things last season in 2024 with Colorado. And he was still a good corner this year. He just wasn't quite as good, and the defense overall wasn't quite as good. So I get this. Now, what happened? So he committed to Notre Dame last week, signed with Notre Dame. His name was not supposed to be put into the portal yet as a signee. They weren't ready to do that yet. There were some things they had to finalize and finish. Somebody dropped the ball and put it in, and that's how that whole thing happened. And it's just very much evidence of the fact that this GM, staff, GM and his staff, just really got to get more organized and on top of things, because things like that should not happen. And there's been a lot of things like that. And I'll share a lot more after the portal season. But I talked to somebody that night who said, no, it was just basically a paperwork mistake that it got out there before it was supposed to get out there. It was never a do we want him or not or anything like that, from what I was told. This is a guy they went after. And Mike Mickens was very involved in it. And there were 2 coaches for sure that, from what I'm told, got heavily involved in making sure that their portal needs and wishes were met. Mike Mickens was one. I believe Mike Denbrock was another. I think that's why the tight end situation got nixed. I think Mike Denbrock and Harris Bibben are very comfortable what's in the room. And I think maybe the GM and his crew kind of wanted to go somewhere, and that got, kind of taken care of. But obviously Mike Mickens was obviously involved in this one. And I think this is his kind of corner, right? 6'2", long, versatile, smart, tough, makes a lot of plays on the ball. And there's certainly a lot to like. Last 2 years, for example, final number, he's allowed 5 touchdowns. Let's compare him to Leonard Moore. He's allowed 5 touchdowns, which is the same number as Leonard Moore has. He has, in the last 2 years, 4 interceptions compared to 7 for Leonard Moore. He has 11 pass breakups compared to 14 for Leonard Moore. So numbers are very similar. Leonard Moore, the last 2 years, played over 1,300 snaps. And the last 2 years, it's about the same number for DJ McKinney. So, his numbers are a little bit closer to what Leonard has done than what Christian has done. He's kind of in between there. And so that's kind of what he brings to the table.
Very excited to see what McKinney can do in South Bend. He has a really good feel for space. He had a play against BYU in their bowl game last year where he was playing zone, and he had it was either a deep quarter or a deep third of the field, but there was nobody in his zone. And so what he did is he read the quarterback's eyes and continued to drift back and drift back and drift back. BYU's, I think it was Jake Retzlaff. I think it was the quarterback for BYU at the time. Thought he could fit it in over McKinney, who's a very long cornerback. He dropped back, made a great play on the ball, got an interception in a bowl game. One thing that I look at, some more premier positions, I don't look at this too much in the trenches, because you can find big-bodied guys, good technically sound guys, no matter what, depending on the level of Division I you're talking about. But for things like quarterback and corner, I look at a lot of the stages that you've played on. It's typically the bigger the moment, the more offensive coordinators will go after a specific player. And DJ McKinney has played on a lot of big stages when he was at Oklahoma State, when he was at Colorado, and obviously he's going to continue to play on big stages when he comes to Notre Dame. But so far in his college career, the kid's played it against Oklahoma, Texas on the road, A&M in a bowl game, BYU in a bowl game, Nebraska on the road, Texas Tech on the road, Utah at home, Kansas State in 2024. So last year's Kansas State at home. So very, very excited to see what he could do. He's a good addition to the room, but he has a really great feel for space. One thing that we always talk about in the high school recruiting shows about Mike Mickens is he always gets players that are good football players, high IQ players. And I think DJ McKinney fits that mold, as well as being in the physical mold of what he looks for as well.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, look, this year he matched up against Isaiah Canyon in the opener, and he allowed 1 catch for 1 yard on one target. I mean, so like you look at like some of the other matchups he's had this year, like he's gone against good players. He's gone against good receivers, and he's more than held his own in those games. And like I watched, what was the game? It was, what game was I watching this year? Was it, I think it was what came after Iowa State? They're playing cover 3. Guy runs a stop route. He completes it for like 12 yards. And it's like, he was a little bit late, but you're kind of going to give that up. The flat defender also didn't buzz underneath it. And, like there was another play, gave up an 8-yard gain on a 7-yard gain on a cover 3 play where they just threw a quick hitch route and he closed on it and tackled the guy right after he caught it. So like even some of the, plays he gave up, you're looking at it and you're like, okay, that's not really like giving up a catch, which happens to Christian Gray as well. That's why Christian's numbers got a little bit inflated this year too, is because people would kind of look at it and be like, oh, he gave up 6 receptions. I'm like, yeah, 5 of them were basically no cover plays where he was giving up a hitch and he closes on the ball and squeezes on the hitch. So, I mean, that's just kind of how the game is played. So, but I like the fact he's in a league, obviously, where there's a lot of good passing teams. This year against BYU, Chase Roberts, he, was targeted twice, gave up 1 catch for 8 yards. If you go back and watch it, that was, again, an off coverage route allowed. I thought he did really well against, like I said, some of the better receivers that they played this year. And I think he brings a lot of value, and also he's a good fit. I think he's a good fit for what Notre Dame wants to do defensively. And so that's what I think makes it a good pickup. Am I sitting there trying to tell you guys like, hey guys, this is a guy's a sleeper. He's going to be a first team All-American this year. This guy's going to be a first round draft. I'm not telling you that. I'm not saying that to you. I'm just saying like, this is a good football player. And I think this pickup makes a lot of sense, for Notre Dame. And, but let me go up. There's one more, and he was matched up last year. He went up against Tet McMillan at times and only gave up, I think, 1 catch in that game to Tet McMillan. So he's a good football player, man. And Tet McMillan, by the way, for those who don't know, is a first-round draft pick against Colorado last year, going against Travis Hunter and DJ McKinney. Tet McMillan, who's a first-round draft pick, had 5 catches for 38 yards in that game. The next week against West Virginia, went for 202. So I think that gives you a sense of how good the cornerback play was for that duo. So he's been tested against some pretty good receivers.
Sure has. Another pickup that they got also in the defensive backfield, and this one I think was the most recently announced, was Jaden Sanders, a 6'1", 193-pound corner from Michigan. And this is another young player, multiple years of eligibility left. Put a good sample size of film out there. I think played in 12 of their 13 games this past season. I know he played in the bowl game against Texas as well. So very excited to see what Jaden Sanders can do in South Bend. This one is definitely an interesting fit in the defensive backfield, given the makeup of the room already. But again, like you said, Mike Mickens loves competition and he loves depth. And I think this kid fits the mold for that, and excited to see what he can do, man.
he started 2-3 games this year. Started against, I think, Central Michigan and Nebraska for sure. Had a career high a number of snaps against Nebraska. Had like 72 snaps in that game. He's played a lot of football, and there's things I like about him. He's 6'2". He's, oh my God, I think he's listed at like 190 pounds, 185, 190 pounds at Michigan. Runs well. I don't think he runs as well as some of the other corners that they got, but he's a strong kid. He's got good feeling coverage. I think he's more of a zone guy right now than he is a pure man guy right now, but he has some strength. There's more film of him I want to watch, but he's a good football player. And he, to me, just my personal opinion, and again, at Michigan, he played more field boundary than anything else. I think he gives you good depth. And what I think he gives you is, another bigger body, a kid, actually, he played boundary, more boundary, but, he gives you another boundary body, so you don't have to worry about Mark Zachary playing boundary. You can have him be more of a field corner. And then he also gives you some insurance in case Carr Adams isn't ready to play right away. And so you get a guy that has experience, that has played, that's been a solid football player so far. He was a top 200 caliber recruit. This isn't like some, 3-star kid that nobody came from. He's from Texas. I always love the fact when Notre Dame goes out and gets Texas players, Trev. That's always a positive. But
absolutely,
I think he's a solid tackler. He was a pretty good wide receiver in high school. I think the thing that he lacks compared to some of the other guys is he doesn't have like the top end speed as some other guys, and he's not quite as fluid as some other guys. He's a guy that you're going to probably want to play a little bit more zone with, but you can let him come up and be physical. You can let him come up and handle his business in the run game, and he's pretty good in coverage. So this is a quality pickup. This one is more a bit of, to me, just for me, is a little bit more of a depth move where you're banking on tapping into some upside down the road. And just you want more players to where you don't have to play your freshman. Because where now it's like, if Carr Adams plays this year, it's because he's too good not to play. Not because you have to. And right now, he was kind of going to have to. Either Mark Zachary was going to have to play out of position behind Leonard Moore, or you were going to have to, force somebody else over there behind him. Now, you've got Jaden Sanders that can play there. And then also Jaden Sanders can play the field, and he just gives you more proven depth. I think that's he brings to the table. It's a solid pickup.
Sure is. Brian, let's kind of tie a bow on this segment and just kind of talk about what's left. What is Notre Dame trying to add to kind of make this a successful portal cycle?
Yeah, look, there's to me, they don't need another wide receiver. But they're still trying to get Mylan Graham. And as I said earlier, do you need Mylan Graham? No. Do you turn down a guy of Mylan Graham's talent? Absolutely not, because he could come here and be a game changer for you. And look, they've got Jordan Faison, they've got this guy, that guy. That doesn't mean that any of them are going to be able to stay in front of Mylan Graham if he came here and put in the work. But the point is, it's not a need from the standpoint of you do have pretty good football players there. And so that's kind of where I look at it. And then, of course, Jordan Faison's going to be gone after this year. So Mylan comes and he's part of the rotation and gives you some big playability. He's fast. He can stretch the field. He's got really good hands. I've had some people say that there's been some questions of his hands. I've never seen that in the game film. I watched every single snap the kid played this year and every ball thrown his way. I see no issues with his hands. He's a really polished route runner. He's got good speed. He's electric with the ball in his hands. He can play field. He can play slot. And Ohio State would even use him in the boundary at times, just because the way they play, sometimes they'll just kind of go with some pace and just stay on the same side, as opposed to flipping field boundary. They'll just leave him there. So, I think those things are things he brings. He's an impact. He's a potential impact player. He's an impact talent. It's just that, is the need there, and is he going to come here and have the focus to kind of do what he needs to do to tap into that potential? And then, of course, when Jordan's gone after this year, maybe he has a chance to become that kind of breakout star next year, or he's going to go back to Ohio State and step into the spot that Cardell Tate had, or at least compete to step in the spot that Cardell Tate had last year. And obviously the latest I've been told, and it's also being reported by others, is that Ohio State is pushing to keep him. I have a feeling that Ohio State missed on some guys in the portal that they thought they were going to get. It's just my read on the situation, and now they're pushing harder to get him back. So they're trying to do with him what Notre Dame did with Armell Mukam. Like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have let that guy walk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at. So they are trying to get him, and I would, if he wants to come on down. Let's do this thing. If he doesn't, I love what they did at receiver. And then, of course, the other position is they want to get a kicker. I don't know that that's done yet. There's some guys they're looking at. I think there's one guy they can definitely get, but they're trying to see what else is out there before kind of going in that direction. And then, of course, defensive tackle is still a position that they're trying to still hit hard. And obviously, James Smith visited this weekend from Alabama this past week. I just don't see that one happening. I've never really understood that one. I don't think he's a fit. He's a former highly ranked kid. The film just doesn't do it for me. And this is a guy that's played a lot of football at Alabama. And Trev, it doesn't do it for me. The film doesn't do it for me. I liked him a lot coming out of high school, but I haven't seen it. You know, he's gotten kind of, in my opinion, progressively worse the longer he's been at Alabama. But at the same time, he is part of the same coaching staff that I don't think does a very good job coaching those players. And so I think that for Notre Dame, it's like, okay, we love the talent, and we think Charlie Partridge can coach him up and get the most out of him. I think that's what they're looking at. But the number one guy on my board, the number one guy that I believe is on Notre Dame's board is Francis Brew. It's just about, can you make it work financially with all the offers that are coming his way? I think that's the big thing. And so they're trying to close there. We'll see if they're able to get it done. That's that. To me, if all you get the rest of the way is Francis Brew, I'm happy. If you add a kicker, great. That's fine. But, you know me, Trev, my go-to is normally, let's let the people you recruited and chose to be here out of high school and showed loyalty out of high school, let's give them a shot to go develop. And then fill some spots if you get a chance to get an impact player here or there, that type of thing. So that's kind of where I'm at. You get Francis Brew, and then I'm happy. There's another D tackle that jumped in the portal yesterday that the staff is trying to make inroads on. I'm not going to say who it is, but he would bring a very different skill set to the table than what they would get from Francis Brew or a lot of the other guys that they're bringing to the table. So he would not be someone that would be a replacement for Francis Brew. He'd be a guy that can maybe play with Francis Brew, is more of a nose where Francis is more of a three technique. So, so they're trying to get going there and trying to make some moves there. I don't know where they're at yet with that one, but they're definitely still working at D tackle after several missteps at D tackle in the portal so far. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. Get him and I'm good. After that, anything after that's gravy. Honestly, you get Francis Brew, and anything you get out of the portal the rest of the way is just gravy. That's the way I look at it.
Love it. Well, this is kind of the final week for players to enter their names in the portal, and I am counting down the milliseconds until we can say that for the most part, Notre Dame's roster is going to be set by Saturday of this week. I am very much looking forward to Saturday of this week, but, like we talked about before, process wasn't great. They're going to be results driven at this point, but this was a good day for them in the portal. Definitely a major step in the right direction. But folks, that is going to do it for us here today on part one today's show. But don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk about CJ Carr. Some interesting news came out about him today, and then we're wrapping everything up today with a mailbag. So get your questions, comments, concerns in. MB for mailbag, mailbox emoji also works as well. But before we get there, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this podcast. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part two of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're going to talk about CJ Carr, Notre Dame's quarterback returning for the 2026 season. First time they've had a returning starting quarterback since 2020. It's kind of in the same line of the news that broke in the transfer portal, but a little bit different. Screenshotted it and sent it to you and Vince and Sean Davis this morning that FanDuel has released their odds for really early odds for 2026 Heisman contenders. And the list that I saw initially, you can expand the list, but the first six that I saw included CJ Carr's name. But one thing that's really, really cool is that CJ Carr is tied for first at plus 800 odds with Arch Manning from Texas as the likely winner as of today to win the 2026 Heisman Trophy. So we wanted to break that down and talk about it. And Brian, this is really good news. And we talked about this in a show about a week ago. We can't remember the last time a Notre Dame quarterback was probably going to enter a season with this much kind of notoriety and hype around him that CJ Carr is going to this year. It's going to be a fun ride, man.
It is. And you know, I mean, like there was like some talk about like Riley Leonard and Sam Hartman as being potential Heisman contenders. They were like, you know, other names to know type of category, right? You know what I mean? It's like when you look at the top 25, it's like also receiving votes. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the equivalent of those guys. I mean, we've seen that. Obviously, Ian Book finished, 9th in Heisman Trophy voting in 2020, which was made easier by the fact that like one league only played 7 games, another league only played 5 games. You know, I mean, those things kind of helped a little bit with that. You know, he was a top 10 Heisman finalist in a year we threw 15 touchdown passes. You know, the year that he put up numbers that basically matched what Fernando almost did it again, Trev. Fernando Mendoza did this year. He, you know, wasn't even in the top 10, but I mean, it's since probably, I mean, but Jimmy Clausen wasn't considered a Heisman contender in 2009 because Notre Dame wasn't very good. You know, you'd probably have to go back to Brady Quinn in 2006, the last time Notre Dame has had a quarterback that's going to be getting the kind of hype going into a season that CJ is going to have. And you know, I think it comes down to a scenario, Trev, where it makes sense. I think it's justified. Both of them. Like, it's funny. You and I were texting, I think it was during the Texas-Michigan game, where Arch's season went exactly how you and I said it was going to go. He was going to struggle early. People needed to be patient. They were going to call him a bust. And you know, he's not what we thought he was. And then the more starts to get under his belt, the better he's going to play. And then he's going to go into next year as a top quarterback. That's exactly how a season went. The last month of the season for Arch was very good. Very good. And then he torched Michigan in the bowl game. Now, that was a Michigan team that was missing a bunch of dudes and you know, those type of things. And so that's kind of, you know, where I'm at on that. But like, he deserves to be in it now. He didn't last year. And CJ deserves to be in it now. I think you'll see Julian Sayin in it as well because it's a quarterback-driven award, even though he's not even close to their best offensive football player. That's Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith, I would imagine. Who are the names on the list along with CJ and Arch? You said there were 6?
Well, yeah, 6 initial at the top. Once you expand the list, I mean, it goes down to like 50.
Who are the top 6 guys on that?
Yeah, on FanDuel, in the top 6 guys, Arch Manning and CJ Carr were tied for first at plus 800. Yeah. Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin were tied at plus 1,000. Gunnar Stockton and Josh Hoover were tied at plus 1,300. Yeah. After that, and Sam Levitt has worked his way up there now that he's committed to LSU. Outside of that, you have it's a bunch of other quarterbacks: Marcel Reed, Jaden Maeva, Dylan Raiola, all those guys.
So here's why we're talking about this. Because this is showing, what this shows is it's a shift in number one, perception of Notre Dame, because I believe Jeremiah Love was a top 10 Heisman candidate going into last year as well, if I remember correctly, Trev. Wasn't this high, but was a top 10 candidate. I believe he was either the first or second in every betting odds you look at. He'd either be the first or second highest rated non-quarterback. It was either him or Jeremiah Smith would be like 1-2 all the time. So this is the second year in a row you're seeing a Notre Dame offensive player being given a lot of preseason Heisman love. No pun intended. Which I think is starting to show there's a recognition that this Notre Dame offense is not what it used to be. Like, this is a legit Notre Dame offense. I think that matters because perception like this, or like somebody's like, why are we talking about Heisman odds? Because this matters. It's going to be on socials. It's going to be talked about. He's going to be getting a lot of love in preseason magazines. And you're trying to convince the next big-time quarterback to come to Notre Dame. You want that type of recognition. You want that type of love. And it's going to make recruiting a lot easier. A lot easier. And that matters. Perception matters. You know, if Notre Dame's going into next season, let's just be honest about this, and they're a borderline playoff team having a Heisman candidate at quarterback is going to have a different view than having a Heisman candidate at running back. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
I think those things matter. But beyond that, I think this is setting the bar for what CJ Carr can be next year. And it's showing that now we're having sort of a changing of the guard at Notre Dame when it comes to what is going to fuel this football team. Last 2 years, it's running the football. It was, you had Riley Leonard, who was going to run the football first and foremost, then throw with Jeremiah, with Jadarian Price. 2023, yeah, you had Sam Hartman, but that team was fueled by Audric Estime. I was going to say Edric Ostime. Like, what is going on with me, dude? Like, I didn't used to be this bad with names, I swear.
I get it. You're trying to add to your all-name team, man.
Yes,
you're trying to add to the all-name team. I get it. I respect it.
But it's been a team that's been driven by running the football. I mean, 2020 and 2021, your offense was fueled by Kyron Williams. And 2022, you had the 1-2 punch of Audric and Logan Diggs. And this has been a team that's been driven by the run game and their running backs now for several years. And now you're talking into an era. You're going into an era where now you're going to be driven by your quarterback from a skill talent standpoint. And the fact that CJ Carr is getting this kind of love is why is one of the reasons you got Quincy Porter out of the portal. It's one of the reasons that you're having a shot to land Mylan Graham. I think those things are it's like you get those players because of CJ Carr. It's not the only reason. They're not going to come here for $50 and a gift card to Ruth's Chris because they get to catch balls from CJ Carr. But I don't care how much you're going to throw to them. No good agent is going to tell their, hey man, don't take that extra $200,000 at Notre Dame because yeah, you get that money, but you're not going to be developed and you're not going to catch balls and you're not going to go to the NFL draft. With a guy like CJ Carr throwing you the football and the perception that CJ has, because he didn't have earth-shattering numbers this past season, Trev. He had good numbers. He was a second-team redshirt freshman All-American. He finished in the top 5. I believe nationally in yards per attempt. Actually, I'm pulling that up now. He finished number 4, tied for 3rd in yards per attempt. One guy ahead of him was Drew Mestamaker by 0.1, who was at a G5 elite level. Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman winner, was 0.1 ahead of him at 9.5, and he was tied with Diego Pavia at 9.4. His 168.06 quarterback rating tied for 5th. The only people ahead of him, Fernando Mendoza, Julian Sand, Diego Pavia, and Drew Mestamaker. And a big reason why he was behind those guys is he didn't throw the ball as much. But number 2, he didn't throw the ball. He threw the ball deep a lot more. A higher percentage of his throws were 20 yards or more, which is going to lower your completion rate, which is going to drag down your quarterback rating a little bit. And so for a redshirt freshman, I thought CJ was very good this year. Now, he didn't finish super strong. And part of that was just you're playing bad teams. You're just kind of running on them. You don't really get a chance to kind of get into any kind of rhythm. And, but the expectations for CJ now going into year 2 as a starter are astronomical. And I think that's where a lot of the excitement is. And we've pointed this out, Trev, when you look at the production of quarterbacks when they go into second seasons as starters under Mike Denbrock. This is going to be the first time that Notre Dame has had a returning starting quarterback since 2020 when Ian Book was going into his 3rd year as a starter. They've had a brand new starter in every single season since then. And I think that's where like a lot of the excitement is coming from with this team. I mean, you look at Desmond Ridder as a redshirt freshman at Cincinnati in 2018 under Mike Denbrock. He goes 7.9 yards per attempt, 20 touchdowns, 2,400 yards passing, a 146 passer rating. 2019, his second year as a starter, that was actually not a great year. But then 3rd year, he has this big jump out, right? He starts to learn the offense. He has a lot more production and then eventually grows into the player. And Desmond Ridder's not anywhere close to the kind of player that CJ Carr is. You look at Jaden Daniels in 2022. First year running the Mike Denbrock offense, 68.6% completion rate. CJ Carr this year was 66.6. Jaden Daniels was at 7.5 yards per pass attempt. CJ Carr was at 9.4. Jaden Daniels had 17 passing touchdowns, 28 total touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. CJ Carr had 27 total touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Jaden Daniels had a 144.54 passer rating. CJ Carr had a 168.06 passer rating. The big difference between the two is that Jaden Daniels had basically been a starter for 4 years. And he got the 5th year in 2023 because of the COVID year, because he started as a true freshman at Arizona State. CJ is just going into year 2, and his year 1 as a starter was as good as what Jaden Daniels did in year 4. And then, of course, the next year, they blew up. And he still had Brian Thomas in 2023 or 22. He still had Malik Neighbors in 2022. He still had the same guys. The Mike Denbrock offense has shown that the longer you're in it, the better you are at running, the better you are with the pre-snap checks, the better you are with pre-snap reads, the better you are with the willingness to throw the ball down the field and the comfort level there. And then, of course, he's going to have a lot of talent around him. So that's why it's important to have this conversation, because you are seeing a changing of the guard a little bit in the Notre Dame offense. A shift in the Notre Dame offense. Then does that mean Notre Dame's going to run for $140 a game next year? No, they're still going to run the football. But you're going to be now more, your success is now driven by your offensive line, first of all, but then number 2, how good your quarterback is. He's going to have to carry the team more this year than, a great running back, which Notre Dame's had a lot of those in recent years. And so I think that is also then going to result in CJ getting more attention when it does come to the Heisman Trophy. And I think the schedule sets up well to where early in the year they're going to be playing Power 4 teams, but not the gauntlet we saw this year at the very beginning, which is going to allow CJ to kind of get into the flow, get into the season, put up some big numbers. And I do think CJ is going to have the kind of season to be a Heisman contender if he can improve aspects of his game, which is not an insult. If a redshirt freshman's maxed out, then that's probably not a good sign.
Agreed. And the thing that I'm looking forward to the most is if CJ has the type of season that we believe that he's going to have, like FanDuel thinks that he's going to have or could potentially have, it's not going to be a secret. Going into this year, it's like people didn't have film on CJ Carr. I see that at really every level of football. I see it in the NFL. I see it a lot at college. I saw a lot of Miami fans talk about how if Notre Dame and Miami faced each other again, they'd be able to shut down CJ Carr because now they have film on him. Well, if CJ has the type of season that we believe that they're going to, that I believe that he's going to, it won't be a secret. It's like, hey, teams know what CJ Carr brings to the table now. They know. But I always evaluate quarterbacks off of what they do in big games. Can't really remember the last time a starting quarterback in his first collegiate start's first career touchdown pass is a no-look touchdown pass. Again, we're talking about optics. And the biggest thing with optics—
on the road against a ranked team.
Right. On the road, in the rain, in a top 5 or in a top 10 against a top 10 team. Good Lord. That
I'm having a bad effect on you. I'm rubbing off on you. It's not good.
You're right. You said it was your fault, not me. So I just want that to go on record.
I'll take the blame. Hey, I'm the boss, right? When things don't go well, I got to take ownership of that. You know what I mean?
No worries,
so that's
man.
on me.
No worries. But I'm really looking forward to what CJ is going to be able to do now that teams have that film on him, because it's not going to be a surprise. It won't be, well, we just weren't accounting for 13. Mm-hmm. To your point about the changing of the guard, it will look different. Because teams aren't going to come in and say, well, they just got to shut down 4 and 24, and we'll see. If we get beat by 13, then Notre Dame was just a better team that day. I guess I would have to imagine that that's what DeAnton Lynn's mindset was and what Lincoln Riley's mindset was. Different story for a different day. But now it will be a situation where it's like, okay, we can't let 13 beat us.
Yeah, and good luck with that, right? And that's why I think they're still going to run the football. Mike Denbrock is not a guy that wants to sit back and just throw the football around all day. I mean, right. Look, even in 2015, when their starting running back got hurt after 3 carries, the backup behind him was a converted wide receiver. And when I mean converted wide receiver, I don't mean like a couple years ago he converted from wide receiver and he's now learned. I mean, he converted that offseason to wide receiver. The next running back, so when Torian Folson goes down, CJ Prosise steps in, the converted receiver, and the number 2 and number 3 backs on the roster were true freshmen. They still ran for over 200 yards a game that year. They still ran the football. Now, it helped that they had Ronnie Stanley, Quentin Nelson, Nick Martin, Mike McGlinchey and Steve Elmer up front blocking for him. But the point is, you had Will Fuller, you had Alize Mack, you had Chris Brown, you had Deshaun Kaiser quarterback, you had CJ Sanders, you had Amir Carlisle in the slot, and you were still balanced that year. And that because Mike Denbrock still wants to be able to run the football. Now, it's going to look different depending on the personnel. In 2023 at LSU, he used his quarterback to run the ball more. But I think when you look at the talent at receiver, you look at the way they're building this team, they're still going to be balanced. But now it's going to be we're really going to be able to hurt you throwing the football. And for CJ, that we'll talk about improving things. But I think that there's more to this than just, they're going to win games this way. If CJ can be just in the top 4 at the end of the year in Heisman Trophy voting, I think that's going to have a big impact on this season. Number one, it's going to have a big impact on Notre Dame's win-loss record. And because if Notre Dame's worse than 11-1, CJ Carr is not in the top 3 or 4 of Heisman Trophy voting. And, I don't think. But if they're 11-1 or 12-0, I think that means CJ had the kind of year we hope he's going to have. It means that Notre Dame's winning a bunch of games and he's putting up numbers. But the part of that also is, if he is able to do that, I think that helps solidify what the image that Mike Denbrock is trying to get out about this team, which is, hey, yes, we've been a defensive-driven football team for a long time and an offensive-driven football team for a long time, and those things will not stop now that I'm here. But what my job is and what my goal is to say, we're going to be every bit as good. Yes, we have a great defense, but we're even better on offense. Like, that's what Mike Denbrock is trying to bring to the table. He's not like, hey, coach, man, can we change what we do on defense so we're maybe not as good and we give up more points so then we can have to score more? No, it's, hey, you keep shutting them down. You hold them to 7, we're scoring 50. That's what he's trying to do. And that's, even this year with the redshirt freshman quarterback, Notre Dame sets has the most points per game they've scored since 1913. Notre Dame set a modern school record, which is post-World War I or World War II in yards per play. Beat the record that he set with the 2015 offense by 0.3 yards, which is significantly higher. And just to give you a sense of the difference between 0.3, what 0.3 can mean. So if you look at this year, Notre Dame was at 7.23 or 7.32. There's only 4 teams in college football that match that. And the record that they had before would have ranked this year 4th in college football if you took that out. 7.3 means Notre Dame was closer to number 1 than they were kind of what came after them. And last year, Notre Dame had a pretty good yards per play average, and they ranked 27th in college football. In 2023, Notre Dame ranked 9th in college football in yards per play, and they ranked and they had 7.95. That was the second best season average they had in a long time, and they were well over that this year. And this year they also did it against good teams as well. They didn't just dominate Central Michigan and teams like that. So it has a big impact on it. And now it's that, okay, now people understand. I'll just look, I won't tell you who it was, but there was a big time recruit that was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he told him, if I was a running back, I'd already be committed to Notre Dame. He's not a running back. He's a wide receiver. Like, that tells you the perception of the program. If CJ Carr getting this type of love opens eyes to kids like that. But if CJ Carr then follows through with that type of season, then now all of a sudden that kid's like, okay, yeah, the only question I had about Notre Dame was, if I go there, will I get developed and will I put up numbers? Because, and honestly, I don't have a problem with the receiver thinking that. Why shouldn't a receiver think that? Well, I want to go to Notre Dame and get a good education. Cool, that's fine. But your desire is to be an NFL football player. That's your major. That's what you want to do with your career. Why would you want to go somewhere that's not going to help build you to that? I have no problem with kids thinking that. You get the season from CJ that I think we think that they can get. Now all of a sudden that narrative changes. And now all of a sudden those type of big-time receivers are like, hey, I can go Notre Dame and catch a lot of balls and put up yards and be a high draft pick. Hey, that's the place to go. So that's my thing is, and you don't have to stop being good in defense to do that. and that's where I think Mike Denbrock's impact is. Like, that's what he was brought here to do. Win championships, number one, but then change the perception of who we are on offense so we can go out there and continue to get big-time players. And I think that's even like CJ's a big reason they got Caden Finley. They got Bubba Frazier. They got Ian Premer. Like, that's a big reason for it, but there's like, well, the perception of him and what he's doing in this offense is starting to change the narrative. This could be the kind of thing that takes it over the top and really helps Notre Dame become that kind of program where people say, okay, you want to play big-time offense, you want to go to the NFL, that's a school that you consider. And that's why this kind of thing matters.
Oh, absolutely. Big with perception. I'm very curious, and I want to get your thoughts on this here, Brian, when we, as we wrap this up. Once Jeremiah Love really started to surge ahead in his kind of Heisman campaign, we talked a lot about what his management would be. And it can't come as a sacrifice to winning football games. Now, I don't mean that if you give Jeremiah Love the football too much that they're not going to win football games, especially with what their schedule was in November. Not saying that at all. But they can't fall victim to, okay, let's just give them the ball 35 times a game, because you have to think, got a playoff run coming. It'll look different for CJ. But what do you think the management with him is going to be? Because Mike Denbrock in press conferences and the Here Comes the Irish documentary that's out, talked a lot about, hey, with him, he's so smart. Mm-hmm. Like, odds are he's one of the smartest people in the room when we sit down and talk ball, that we have to pull the reins back on him.
Yeah.
What do you think that's going to look like for him this year?
Yeah, I think at times they didn't do a great job of that. And that's because he can handle so much mentally in the film room, in the meeting room, and even on the practice field. But then you get to games and he's still seeing things for the first time from defenses. And I don't think his body and mind worked as well together as just his mind did when he's on the field, or when he's on the chalkboard, or he's in the film room. And so they had to find that balance. And I think at times CJ's so smart that you can put a little bit more on his shoulders. And I think that started to happen late in the year. And I think CJ also kind of, like a lot of young kids, was wearing down physically. It was a long season and things like that. And that's why I don't think he finished as well. He was short arming some throws. He was aiming throws. I just think being a redshirt freshman, that's going to happen to you. I actually was really looking forward to seeing what he was going to do in the playoffs, when he could sit back, take a month off, watch film, and get fresher physically. Well, now he's going into his junior year of college. Physically, he's going to be stronger next year. There's not a lot he's going to go into next year and say, I haven't seen that. I haven't experienced that moment. I haven't experienced that defense. I haven't experienced that look. I haven't experienced that situation of, I'm looking at my boundary because they're playing off coverage and we're going to take the quick access throw, but the guy's baiting me. He's going to squat down. Where do I go next? Or, hey, I know in double slant, I'm thinking of that Stanford play. I know in double slant, it's an inside-out read, but I'm seeing that guy jump my inside slant. He's open, but I'm seeing that off corner outside. I'm going to go off of what my read should tell me, because that's the better play. Whereas a redshirt freshman, and you're going through it the first time, you're taking your number one read if it's there. You know what I mean? And the experience teaches you the next time that comes. Yeah, I'm looking at film like, dude, if I'd have taken that, I promise you, CJ's watching film thinking the exact same thing I'm thinking. Yeah, that was the read, but man, if I'd have just taken that outside slant, Faison's got to make one guy miss, and he's out the gate. Where Will Pauling's catching the ball and getting tackled for a first down because of the safety coming down harder. Those are things that CJ is going to learn now that he has the reps, which means you can put even more on him mentally, and he'll now be able to translate that more to the field with better pre-snap reads, better post-snap decision-making, and honestly, a little bit more willingness to make some tough throws. I think CJ early in the year was more willing to make tough throws than he was later in the year, because I think early in the year he wasn't thinking. He was just playing ball. But the more you play as a redshirt freshman and you make some mistakes, and some bad mistakes, then you're like, ooh, I don't want to do that again. Like the interception of CJ, I think that got in his head a little bit, which, believe me, folks, happens when you're a young quarterback. You get like my first interception in college, Trev, as a starter, was a slant route where I just did not see the linebacker, hit him right in the chest. right in the chest. The rest of that game, I was a little bit gun shy throwing slant routes. I'm like, okay, I don't want to miss that guy. It kind of having a now, I will say in that game, I did throw a game-winning touchdown pass. We're down 27-24 with 52 seconds left. Led a final fourth quarter drive, 32-yard touchdown pass to Thomas Brown. So I just want to remind, little big, but I battled back. You know what I'm saying? Battled back. We got the
It's always
dub.
how you finish. Come on.
That's right. That's right. That's absolutely right. I mean, now I was part of the reason we were down 27-24, but that's a different story for a different day.
And we don't got to talk about that. That's first quarter problems, baby. Come on.
We're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about how you finished, right? I mean, granted, they scored a touchdown after I hit the linebacker in the chest, but we don't need to talk about that, right? We don't need to talk about that. But the point is, like, that'll get in your head a little bit as a young quarterback. That interception against USC, you could tell his reaction. He was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And I think he was a little bit kind of, maybe I don't want to make that mistake again. And he was a little bit, kind of aiming throws a little bit instead of just letting it rip like he was early. I think we'll see less of that in year 2. And now the things that Mike Denbrock is putting on him, CJ's seen it. He's seen it on the board. He's seen it in practice. He's seen it in the games. He sees what makes it work. He sees what makes it not work. He knows when to take this throw. He knows when to take that throw. I mean, there were things in the game like against Stanford where it's like he reads play side. He ends up, I think, scrambling for 6 or 7 yards where he should have known, like, you got to go backside on your read on that. And then if you do, Jordan Faison's wide open on a stop route and you can hit him. And like those things are what CJ will improve upon as he gets more time in the system. And just kind of letting it rip. Like there were just too many times where I just felt like, especially when he was throwing to someone other than Malachi Fields. Like when he threw to Malachi, he just kind of let it rip because then they had enough faith that Malachi was going to go get it. But when he's throwing to other guys, I don't know if he had as much of that because they were, one guy's 5'10 and the other guy's 5'11, maybe, and there's less margin for error. And I just think CJ sometimes will just aim the ball a little bit instead of just letting it rip. Hopefully now that he's got a full year as a starter, he's got more time with these receivers and putting the work in that he'll be more willing to just let it go, and just, hey, be willing to attack. And then learn to live with mistakes more than you as a redshirt freshman. Like Ant VR says, as long as he doesn't throw the USC pick again, I'm good. And yeah, you don't want to ever see that again. But if he does make a play like that again, like Deshaun Watson did the year that they won the national title at Clemson, you hope that it doesn't affect him like it did, I think, this time. And those are the things where you'll see him kind of improve. And the offensive line's got to be better. I don't think he had a lot of faith in the offensive line late in the year. I think that was part of it as well. So I just think he was a little bit mentally drained from a long season with a lot of pressure on from you've got to win every game. You got to win every game. And those things kind of go away the more you play, the more you understand how to handle those things. Because I can tell you as a coach, all I want, hey, man, this is going to happen. You're going to be okay. But until a young man goes through it, he doesn't really, I knew what this is going to be like. You can do crowd noise all you want. You can play, if you're going to play Florida State, you can play the all you want in practice. It's not the same as when 80,000 people are doing it in the stadium.
100%.
You know what I mean? And so you have to have those experiences. And, of course, you go into this offseason. Last year was you have to prove yourself. Now your mindset's different. Now it's time for me to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be something that some quarterbacks don't handle that well. I think CJ Carr is the kind of quarterback that I think not being the guy that was the focal point of the team, meaning like, look at me, I'm your leader, follow me. I actually think was probably not good for CJ. Everything I know about CJ and have been told about CJ, and I don't know the kid personally. I mean, a couple of Twitter DMs, but like I've never sat and talked to CJ. But everything I know about him, I think he flourishes when he has that pressure on him to, I'm the leader. You have to follow me. I have to set the example. And I think that's actually going to be a good thing for him. Not every quarterback's that way. And I think that's going to factor into why my expectations are going to be very high for CJ too. But I think going back to the original conversation, this whole thing about the Heisman hype and all this kind of stuff, I don't know that that's going to phase him a whole lot as long as the coaching staff around him handles that. Hey, listen, man, this is pretty cool. I don't want to hear another word about it. This isn't what we don't give a rip about you in the Heisman. We want you to do this. That stuff will take care of itself. I mean, if he's smart, Jaywan Sider did not go into the year every day in practice and be like, hey, this is what you got to do to win Doak Walker Award. I mean, you can set that as a goal. Why not, right? I mean, you want to be the best running back in the country? The best running back in the country wins the Doak Walker Award. These are our goals for the season. All right, now let's focus on how we get there. And Mike Denbrock's going to be, well, that's not a Heisman winning throw. Boy, that's a Heisman winning throw. It's like, bro, run the offense. Do what you do, and that stuff will take care of itself. But again, I think big picture, perception-wise, recruiting-wise, things like this certainly help Notre Dame. You just have to make sure you have a kid leading the charge that has the shoulders to carry that load. And I think anyone that knows CJ Carr at all thinks that he's capable of doing that. And sadly, a big part of that is because of, he's gone through some stuff in life, him and his family, where it's like, do you really think I'm that worried about what somebody, what Brian Driscoll said about me in a podcast or wrote in an article? Do you think I really care about what that guy has to say with what we've been through? Oh, this is still a game he loves, a game he's passionate about, but like, this isn't life or death. You know what I mean? This is a young man that understands what's in front of him. I think embraces what's in front of him. Wants the pressure, wants the smoke, and just has a different outlook on things. That's the stuff that I've been told about him. That's what I've seen with my eyes. And trust me, some of the people I talk to at Notre Dame have no problem saying, I don't know if this guy has it. And that's not at all what they say about CJ. And I think now that it's his team in this offseason, which last year wasn't, it was Kenny versus CJ versus Steve. And if anything, Steve was the guy that kind of was placed on that pedestal because he was the older player. He had played and all that kind of stuff. Now it's like there is no debate. That's our leader. Lead us to the promised land. That's what it's going to be like in that locker room. And I think that's going to be good for CJ. This kind of pressure, I don't know that he feels it, but it's good for the program because now it gives them some positive PR and recruiting and all that kind of stuff. So I like that this is out there. I'm not like, I don't want there to be any pressure on him. If he can't handle some off-season Heisman pressure, then he's not going to handle the playoff pressure,
right? Championship
pressure, playing Miami pressure, playing BYU. He's going to fold under those instances.
Very excited to see what's in store for CJ in 26. He strikes me as a comes with the territory type of guy where he'll acknowledge it. It'll be cool. Guarantee he'll get asked about it throughout the spring, throughout the offseason. And like I said, I think his answer will be the same. Hey, I'm the starting quarterback at Notre Dame. Comes with the territory. Personal accolades are something that is a byproduct of, to your point, putting in the work. Very excited.
And this isn't about me. This is about the guys in the room. And he'll give you that. And he'll mean it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean he doesn't want to win the Heisman. I think every player wants to be recognized as the best in the game. But it's like, but I get that honor because of the work I put in and what I do.
100%.
And then if he does have, hey, CJ, like you're this, and you'll get people on the beat that'll ask that question. And I know exactly the two people I have in mind for the ones that'll keep asking that stupid question when we get into the season. But and it won't be the pros. You know what I'm saying? We know who we're talking about here. But yeah, I'm excited about it, and I'm happy for the kid too, right? Because he had to battle. He had to beat out two pretty good quarterbacks. A guy that was leading the nation in passing before he got hurt, a guy that's getting ready to go start in the SEC, and Kenny Minchie. And, when they battled, CJ is the one that, rose on top of the mountain. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he's got in store in year two. It's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're wrapping everything up with a mailbag, so be sure to get those questions, comments, concerns in there. MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji lets us know to set it aside. But before we get there, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. But as always, the best way to support what we do here and stay in the now, with the offseason being what it is, be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, and final part of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We have a mailbag to take us home. And again, this does happen to be your first mailbag, we have an awesome crowd in here today, guys. Over 1,300 listeners. That's fantastic. Odds are probably some first-time listeners here or there. So if you want to get your question answered, be sure to put MB for mailbag in front of your question or a mailbox emoji in front of your question. That lets us know to set it aside. Now, we're going to be able to go for a while. Unfortunately, we can't go forever. So if you want your super chat answer, or you want your question answered, you can always put in a super chat, and that gets bumped to the top. And Brian, I think we have a couple in there, pretty sure.
We do, yeah. Rebel Irish with the super chat for the positive waves. Thank you very, very much for that. And our guy UT Irish with a question, as a super chat as well. Thank you very much, Drew. Appreciate you.
Appreciate the super chat, Brian. You've kept us all semi-sane this last week. What has been the hardest part for the IB crew this portal week? Tell me if I'm wrong about it, but going nuts over the portal pickup. Love this show. Appreciate you.
I think the hardest part was being patient and knowing what was going on, not being able to say what was going on, and trying to get people to understand it's not going great, but it's not going terrible either. And at the end of the day, relax, let it play out. I mean, there were some guys that we knew were going to jump in the portal that weren't there yet, and different things like that. But you're also frustrated by the things that you know that they're not doing the right way, which had some, cost them some time. There were some guys they went after that they just should have not have wasted their time with. There's some guys they probably could have had if they wouldn't have dropped the ball in some certain instances. I mean, those things are very frustrating. And so part of you wants to dive into the anger. Like you want to vent as well, but knowing that, like, look, this is a marathon. It's not the same kind of marathon as like high school recruiting. It's a bit of a sprint, but maybe this is more of a 200-meter dash or a 400-meter dash as opposed to a 100-meter dash. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily like, a cross country, 5-mile race or whatever, but it's still a sprint. Maybe it's, like I said, maybe it's the 400 instead of the 100, but it's still a sprint. You got off to a bad start and you have to finish well. And they're still trying to do that. They're not done doing that yet. So, like I said, I do think that they're trying to close with Mylan Graham. I do think they're trying to get Francis Brew. I do think they want to get a kicker, and then there's a couple other things that they're working on too. But I think that's the big key is let it play out. And then we can evaluate all the good and the bad at the end. And so I think that was my frustration is just people not being willing to wait and be patient and just losing their minds and the constant negativity. And it's like, look, it's okay to say things aren't going great without just being absolutely nuts about it. And X, X has been unbearable the last week, just unbearable because people just losing their minds about it. And we'll see kind of how it finishes, but there's still work to be done. This is a good finish so far. If you can add one more D tackle, this is a really good finish. Do I love how the offseason has gone? No. Do I think if they can get Francis Brew that I'm now going to say I think Notre Dame has the best roster in college football next year? Yeah, I am. So end of the day, what matters for the 26 team is what are the results at the end of the portal process. That doesn't mean you accept the process, but that's up to Marcus Freeman to fix and make sure that they don't make those same mistakes next year. And don't hope that they can just rely on being Notre Dame like they are right now, and have a cleaner process next year. But at the end of the day, it's the finish that matters. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, hardest part for me was just living in the gray.
Mm-hmm.
It was the hardest part was balancing the terrible abrupt end to the season followed by really just kind of whatever the heck this portal process has been. That's been the hardest part because I'm like you guys. Brian's like you guys. We want answers.
Yeah.
But it's that patience piece. It's the living in the gray piece. That was definitely the hardest part.
And we know some of the mistakes they've made. And so like Rebel Irish said, trust the process. Like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying trust the process because I don't think I think the process was sloppy, real sloppy. But my point was, this is also still Notre Dame, and this is also still Marcus Freeman selling these kids on Notre Dame. You know what I mean? And this is still Mike Denbrock and still Mike Mickens and still Al Washington and still, guys that can recruit. And that's kind of where I was, is they can still finish strong, even though the process has been flawed. And now you fix the process and make sure that you don't find yourself in here again next year. And that's kind of where I'm at. And that was a frustrating thing, is just to see, like, and then people reporting things they probably shouldn't be reporting, and I think part of this is on us as media. Is there's some things that were put out there that shouldn't have been put out there, or at least not put out there with as much certainty as they put it out there. And then when things don't go their way, people are then losing their minds. When I'm like on the board, I'm like, guys, I never said that they were going to get Nick Marsh. I never even said that Nick Marsh was their number one guy, because as I told you, Trev, even when he was on the board, he's not their number one guy.
Correct.
And the guy they ended up getting was not even like, when the process started, Quincy Porter wasn't even really on their radar. Quincy Porter wasn't even on their radar, because it wasn't even certain he was even going to jump in. And then as soon as there was kind of the win that they got wind that he was, it completely shifted focus. And it worked out. It worked out. So that was the challenging part, is just trying to get adults to be like, hey guys, it's okay to be fired up, but how about we take a deep breath? It's a 2-week process. Just let the 2-week process play out, see where they land. And then we can talk about what went right. And then we can talk about what went wrong in a more calm manner. And that's kind of, that's kind of where I'm at. So that part was frustrating, but I get the passion also, right? Like, that passion that leads to those overreactions is also what leads to people watching the show in the middle of, January, and being part of a message board and all that. It's just be passionate. Just be patient. That's all.
Super chat from the Irish King 1. Appreciate you. You're the best show ever.
Thank you for that.
You're the ones I'll trust to tell the truth. Even when I get impatient, you also settle down there, little Jimmy. If I ever win the lottery, I'm donating $1 million to you.
Yes. Yes. Don't do it through YouTube. We have other ways to do it. I don't want to get 50% taken by YouTube and then another 50% taken by the government. So don't do it through YouTube. Kidding, YouTube. Don't ban me. But anyway, no, I appreciate you, man. I do. And again, I get the passion. I get the fire. I like that people are fired up about it. Sometimes it's just like, just trust me, right? Like, I'm pretty good with this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, if there's reason to panic, I'll tell you. If there's reason to be calm and just let it play out, maybe it might not. Because Trev will tell you, I wasn't sitting here a week ago, but like, guys, it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. I was not saying that. I was like, this is a little bit of a weird process, but let's just see how it plays out first. And then we got good word. And I told you a few days ago, was it Friday? I told you, I was like, I think this Porter thing is going to work out, Thursday or Friday. But, there's still work to be done. And so it's just like, let the process play out, and then we can evaluate it. But like I said, I'm usually pretty good with this stuff. When I tell you guys to be patient, there's a reason for it. When I tell you there's something to be concerned about, there's a reason for it. It's not an emotional reaction. I haven't talked to one source, and that's why I feel that way. Like, there was somebody, I can't remember which site it was, but some poster site was like, he talked to so-and-so's mom, and that's why he's hard on Joe Rudolph. I'm like, how stupid do you think I am that one parent in a room of 20 kids doesn't like Joe Rudolph, and I'm going to go run with it and be like, Joe Rudolph's a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe I've talked to like 7 parents and multiple players and other coaches who have concerns about it. So like, I'm usually, not to toot my own horn, but I'm usually pretty good with this stuff. So just relax, let it play out, and then we can evaluate it, good or bad, at the end of the day. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I would much rather have to convince people off the ledge than convince people to care.
Yeah,
I'm with you.
That's absolutely right. I'd rather rein people in than be like, yeah, why? Where's the patch? And honestly, that's where it was going towards the end of the Brian Kelly era. People were just, whatever. I know we're not going to win it all, so I don't care. Yeah.
Yep.
And I also want to remind people, hey guys, you do remember they just signed the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they're going to have trouble replacing all these guys. Well, they're bringing in 27 true freshmen who are really freaking good.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be okay.
From M. Sully, will the SEC finally shut up? No. Or will they continue to act like they are special?
Oh, no, they're not going to shut up, and they're going to absolutely if anything, Greg Sankey's going to double down. Texas was probably our hottest team, and if Texas would have been in the playoffs like they should have been, who knows how things would have turned out. Well, yeah, dude, if you get 12 of the 12 teams in the playoff, there's a pretty decent chance that your league's going to win it all. You know, you had half the Power 4 teams in the league you had, and you had one team get to the semis. They got there by beating another one of your teams. You know what I mean? And, so frustrating.
Yeah, the thing that stinks is the spin is going to work out in the SEC's favor because they can say stuff like, look at the rigorous regular season that they played. And shoot, they could take clips from this show where we talk about how like the SEC schedule week in and week out is just 10 times better than what the Big Ten is putting out.
Because of the Big Ten intentionally making it easier.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
But I'm saying like the spin of what the SEC could do of like, hey, our regular season schedule is just so much more rigorous than that of the Big Ten, which is true. But that doesn't then directly correlate to their struggles in the postseason. And so, yeah, they're absolutely going to continue acting like they're special.
Yep. They absolutely will. And so will ESPN. It's like, well, some guy, I think Peter Burns, I think is his name. Is that the right name? SEC network guy for ESPN. I think that's his name. He seems like I don't follow him, I don't think, but his stuff pops up on my page. And he's like, man, the SEC haters got it right. And I was like, all right, just bear with me for a second. Just follow me here. Maybe a lot of us aren't SEC haters. We're just giving you real analysis of the SEC that you SEC homers at ESPN and the SEC network and SEC fans weren't willing to do for your league. Maybe your league was not actually as good as you thought it was, and we weren't haters. We were just objective, something that you cannot be because you work for the network and because that's your bread and butter. That's what pays your bills, is the SEC. So it's like, look, we said all year, this is a deep league. There's no great teams in the league. We said that all year. And unfortunately, the best team in your league, in my opinion, I know people won't agree with this, got dropped way too far for their last win of the regular season and had to play a team in Miami that they shouldn't have had to play. I mean, if Texas A&M would have played the team that should have been ranked 10th based on the teams they actually put in, then they'd have been playing Bama. Again, not should have put Notre Dame in. I'm not even having that conversation. If you're going to put Miami in, Miami should have been in over Alabama. Like they should have been higher than Alabama. And Texas A&M got screwed, in my opinion, a little bit by having to play Miami instead of Alabama. So, yeah, it won't shut them up at all. Like not even a little bit.
No.
Not even kind of.
No, not even close. Ballpeen Shillelagh pulling a wide receiver like Porter from the portal from Ohio State is a sign that Notre Dame's wide receiver pitch is good enough to bring in superb talent. Now they have to prove they can reach elite development.
Spot on. And this goes back to, and this came up early in the show, but this is exactly the point we were making with CJ Carr. The pitch works. Why? Mike Denbrock, CJ Carr.
Yep.
That's why the pitch works. Because Mike Denbrock can sell, look what I did with Brian Thomas. Like, think about this. If you're Mike Denbrock and you're talking to Quincy Porter, hey, coach, do you have any experience working with a 6'4", 210-pound, like vertically oriented player? Yeah, dude. Kind of recently. Had this kid named Brian Thomas who's like 6'4", 200 pounds. Had 68 catches for me, 1,100 yards, 17 touchdowns. First-round draft pick. Yeah, it's 2 years ago. I've got experience with that. Yeah, I recruited a couple guys to Notre Dame that turned out to be okay. One kid's name was Chase Claypool in that 1,000-yard year, second-round draft pick. Another guy was, named Miles Boykin, third-round draft pick. Also coached a guy named Alec Pierce, boundary guy. He's doing pretty good at Colts now. Like, yeah, that stuff works. That sells. And then now that you've got a trigger guy like CJ Carr to carry that plan out, it's going to be a lot more appealing. So, like, did Notre Dame have to put together a good NIL pitch to get Quincy Porter? Yeah, they did. I'll tell you this from what I've heard from three different people I talked to. the NIL matter. Like, he wasn't going to take a huge discount to come to Notre Dame, nor should he. Like, what's the reason he should take a discount? But what I will tell you is that from what I was told, the NIL part mattered, but Quincy very much had but I want to make sure that I'm going somewhere that has a system that works and has a quarterback that can throw the football. And that was a big part of why. Now, Notre Dame had to put together a competitive NIL offer, no doubt. But if they didn't have that, the NIL part wouldn't have mattered. Wouldn't have mattered one bit.
The CJ Carr impact is huge with the Porter acquisition in the portal. Because to your point, the selling points of like, have I coached a receiver like you before? Yeah, but if I was in the shoes of that guy and I was looking out for the best interest of my future, I'd be like, okay, well, who's throwing me the football? Because, yeah, you coach Brian Thomas. You had Jaden Daniels throwing the football then. Like that. So you could coach those guys all you want to, but who's going to be the one delivering the package? And I think that's going to be that's such a huge impact. Like, that's kind of the I guess, direct impact of what CJ Carr has. Spectacular. From Rebel Irish, how much, in your guys' opinion, did the hire of Charlie Partridge help move any D-line fellas on the fence?
Well, I think it helped with Armell Mukam. And I think it helped with Francis Brew because he recruited Francis Brew to Pitt. He never coached him because he left that offseason before Francis Brew's freshman year, but there was a relationship already there. And that certainly helped. Like, the NIL deals, again, just because you know a coach doesn't mean you're going to take $400,000 less to go to school than another school. You know what I mean? But like, when things are close, I'm going to go with the guy that I know, the guy that has a proven track record. There's a reason I committed to go play for this guy out of Ohio. So I think that helped. I don't know that it helped a whole lot with like the Bama kids. I think they're looking for something a little bit different. And, and I think it'll have more of an impact probably next year than it will this year. But it certainly did with Armell Mukam and Francis Brew. There's no doubt. Now, is it enough that they were definitely going to go somewhere else, and then he comes along and they're definitely going to get these guys? I don't think it's that either. I think it's just one of the notches in Notre Dame's belt in regard to getting these guys here. That's what I think it had more to do with that.
Yeah, makes sense. From M. Sully, final question from me. Is this a gap closing start of a portal class? What else is needed to be gap closing?
You need a D tackle. Yeah, I mean, look, to me, I don't really view this as a gap closing start of a portal class because I think talent-wise, Notre Dame has already closed the gap. I mean, I think Notre Dame has one of the most talented rosters in college football. What this is a hole-filling portal class. Where do they have needs to add a level of impact talent? D tackles one. Well, to me, that's why I'm not ready to say this is, even if I was going to use the terms gap closing, I wouldn't say it yet because I can't say that this is a gap closing start when the primary need that you had in the portal you have yet to get other than retaining a guy that was already on your roster. So until they add a defensive tackle that brings you that type of value, then it's still a work in progress. That's why I say, like, Francis Brew is the number one guy on the board when it comes to position of when it comes to need. Like, you need him more than you need DJ McKinney. You need him more than you even needed Quincy Porter. I would say Quincy Porter's the second best because even though we loved the roster, when you and I sat down, I look, if they don't sign a receiver, I'm good because I love the receiving core that they have. But what we did say is what they don't have, however, is that tall, big-bodied, just boundary vertical receiver. And if you can get that in the portal, give me that. And that's exactly what they got in Quincy Porter. Now, he doesn't have the experience of some of the guys they've landed in the past. He doesn't have as much experience as Malachi Fields. He doesn't have as much experience as Chris Mitchell or Bo Collins. But he's got talent that takes a backseat to nobody. The thing with Quincy Porter is, are you willing – and this is true for all – this is true for him. It's true for Cam Williams. It's true for Micah Gilbert. It's true for, Mylan Graham, wherever he ends up, whether it's Ohio State or Notre Dame. It's true for Cam Coleman. It's true for a lot of these young guys. Do you understand the work ethic that it takes to maximize your potential? Because at this level, you're not Randy Moss. You're not Calvin Johnson, where you're just so much more physically gifted than anybody else. You're just going to be good no matter what at this level. All of those kids, Jeremiah Smith is this way. All of them. Yes, your talent is pretty elite, but you've got to put in the work to get the most out of your talent. And so when I look at a guy like Quincy Porter, that's what's going to determine whether this is a home run pickup or just one that looked good on signing day, so to speak, but doesn't necessarily have the same impact once the pads are put on. And it's just really going to come down to that, because we know Mike Denbrock wants to use his talent. It's, will he put in the work? And look, I haven't heard any questions about Quincy Porter's work ethic. None. So I'm not saying this is an issue for him. He's got to prove it. This is a general statement with young players that haven't done a whole lot. Yeah, you're talented, but do you understand and are you willing to embrace the work that goes into maximizing your God-given talent? If he does that, I think he could be a star at Notre Dame. If he doesn't, and if he gets like 80% of the way there, he's going to be a pretty good football player at Notre Dame. Anything below that, and you're like, okay, he's not going to be quite what you need him to be.
Yeah, I think that's extremely fair. I mean, look, based on the state of Notre Dame's current roster, one that you and I both believe is top 5 in the country, for a portal class to be gap closing, I have to see what they do on the field. You can sign a bunch of names if you want to, and you can sign highly touted guys, but that's the next step in Notre Dame's evolution of closing the gap. Is they brought in highly touted recruits. They've stacked recruiting classes very well at an elite level, depending on the position that we're talking about. But until that potential starts to reflect of on-field production, it's just kind of all for conversation. If landing Quincy Porter is awesome, but if he plays 80 snaps for Notre Dame this year, I'm not going to sit back and say, well, because of the name and the potential, it was a gap-closing portal class. On the field also has to be a big factor in that as well. So that's where I'm at with that one.
There's another question about Quincy Porter. I'll get to this. Brandon Plensler says, is Porter talented, healthy enough to come in and start Boundary right away? Not in the spring, because I don't know that he's going to be practicing in the spring. He injured his knee late in the year. I don't know the severity of it. It's been weird reading the reports of it from Ohio State people. Like, I don't know that they disclosed specifically what it was. I don't believe the latest I heard is I don't think he'll be there in the spring, but I also don't think it was like a devastating injury where you're getting like a guy that's not healthy. I don't believe it was like a bad injury, like a really bad injury. So I don't think he'll be out there in the spring. Honestly, I'm okay with it. I mean, he'll be there. He'll be in school. He'll do all that. He'll learn the offense and rehab and all that kind of stuff. But does he have the talent to come in and start in the boundary right away? Absolutely. Like, honestly, Trev, I think he has the talent to repeat the numbers that Malachi Fields had this year. Like, Malachi Fields didn't have the numbers that his performance should have dictated because of the nature of the offense, because it was such a running back driven offense. Because teams played to stop him for chunks of the year. You had a lot of production going to the tight end. You had a lot of production going to Jordan Faison and the slot and all that. I mean, he had 36 catches for 630 yards and 5 touchdowns. If he's healthy, I would not be at all surprised if Quincy Porter could put up those kind of numbers as like right away. And then in year 2, build on that even more. I think that's possible. That doesn't mean he's as good of a player as what Malachi was last year. I think there's more opportunities for that boundary position to produce this year than there was last year. That's kind of, I mean, CJ only attempted like 24 passes a game. I'll be shocked if he's at least not at like 28, 29 next year. I'll be pretty surprised by that. Now, part of that is because you threw like 4 against Syracuse. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But threw 12 against Purdue and some of that. But I think that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I think so too. There's also a possibility too that it's like because of his youth and because of the injury that he suffered and his limited, if not zero availability in the spring, there's a chance that the boundary position could be as productive, if not more productive, than what Malachi Fields was, but not due to one individual player. Let's not forget, they still have Cam Williams on the roster. They still have Micah Gilbert on the roster. They still have Caden Finley on the roster. So there's other options here as well. It's not, I don't, and this is just my opinion, and I could be wrong on this, or I could be reading this way off, but I don't know if Quincy Porter comes in and plays 600 snaps by the end of a 12-game regular season. He might. He might come in and be Notre Dame's number one boundary guy, but because of the level of talent that's also still on the roster, I think it'll be more of a rotation than it will just be like it was in 24, where it's like Bo Collins is just the boundary receiver. Malachi Fields is just the boundary receiver. So I think it could be a little bit more of that than just one sole person dominating the snaps.
Agree.
Super chat from Let Major 19. Appreciate you. College football's fears of Notre Dame have arrived. The roster is loaded. Thanks, guys, for getting us all through this past week.
I don't know that we necessarily got you guys through the past week. We tried our best, but yeah, it's I mean, I guess I'm just I get where you're coming from. I think there's a lot of panic in college football right now. I've seen more anti-Notre Dame comments the last year than I have seen in the previous 20. Like, I mean, hateful comments. Not like, you guys are irrelevant, go away. But like anger, resentment. And I think a lot of that is the fear we talked about. When Notre Dame comes back, is truly back to being an elite team, that you're going to get that kind of response. And I think that's been evident. I mean, they're still talking about Notre Dame on ESPN. And like every game I've watched so far, like it's like they talk about Notre Dame. It's like, man, they're really in your heads. Like they're really in your heads, and I get why. But when I look at this situation and I look at kind of where the team is, I'm excited about what the roster looks like, but I can't say the gap is closed, and I can't say that they've arrived until they win a championship. Because until they win a championship, they're still just knocking on the door. Well, they played for the title last year. They played for the title in 2012 as well, and they weren't there yet. They hadn't arrived. And TCU played for the title a few years ago. They haven't arrived. You know, the success is, okay, are you doing that year after year after year? And are you able to win those games? That's what arriving means for me. And until they do that, then they're knocking on the door. Their roster's as good as anybody, but they had one of the best rosters in college football this year, and they still went 10-2. That's kind of where I'm at.
I appreciate the super chat, Let Manager. I do. It's funny what 4 portal commitments can do. Look, I understand where you're coming from. And honestly, some of it is just this fan base, myself and Brian included, needed some sort of positivity with this program, especially with the things that have gone down in the last month and a half. So I'm there with you. That being said, we've been telling people for the last month that this roster's been loaded. And with all due respect, you could argue that the biggest portal pickup that Notre Dame got in the last 24 hours was getting a guy that was on the roster a month ago. And so I get it. You need the positivity. I'm there with you. But, you know, let's be real here. They picked up 2 defensive backs. It's unclear what their role is going to be, but they will have a role. They picked up an exciting commitment on the defensive end. And I'm not trying to downplay this at all, but this has been the state of Notre Dame's roster already. This is still an extremely talented unit, but it is just an observation. It's funny what 4 portal pickups can do to change the mindset. And honestly, it was needed. This fan base needed a little bit of positivity after everything that's gone on since the playoff snub. So I'm here for it. I appreciate you, Let Manager. It's just, it is interesting how some of the stuff ends up playing out.
Yeah. Okay, so I said we weren't going to talk about the Freeman stuff the allegations and all that kind of stuff before the show because I've said my piece on Twitter. I didn't want to comment on it. Because it is a pending legal matter, but I do think it's important to note this. Breaking news that the St. Joseph County Prosecutor's Office has announced that they will not be filing charges against Marcus Freeman, which is what you and I expected, because Vince and I have known about this for well over a week. We've talked to multiple people that were there, and basically what this clown was saying didn't happen. He was in the wrong. He's an idiot. He's looking for a payday because he's a miserable piece of crap as a human being. That stuff I've been told by other people. I don't know the guy. Every evidence I have is that this is true. That's what other people are telling me. And so it was announced today, the prosecutor said they will not be charging. This is what they said. This is a direct quote. Based on a review of all the evidence, the state would not be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime occurred. While the evidence suggests that a touching may have occurred, an inadvertent touching is not sufficient. The state is therefore declining to file any charges. And they talked about different witnesses that they talked to that basically you read it. What he claimed happened is not supported by what a single witness that came forward said happened. And basically what we all knew to be true from talking to a bunch of people that were there, including people who are not like Notre Dame football fans. This guy started it. He was looking for a fight. Marcus Freeman did go down and do what he needed to do to protect his son and get him out of that environment. But Marcus Freeman did not do what I think a lot of us probably would have done in that situation, or wish he would have done in that situation, and gone at him. I also found it unlikely that he said he two-hand shoved him in the chest, because I don't know if Marcus Freeman can squat down that low to push this guy in the chest. He's 5'5". He's a little tiny guy that's got Napoleonic complex, and he's a big-time loser, and this is not the first time he's been involved with such a situation. And anyone that knows Marcus Freeman, I think, knew that this was BS the moment that it was reported. So I am glad that there's at least some finality to that. But Trev, based on our conversations, we had a feeling that this was going to happen. Because there's no there. You know what I mean? Except you're an idiot. You're trying to get a payday because you can't make your own living like other people have. There's some clear jealousy. That guy's tall. He's good looking. He actually can get chicks. I can't. He's successful in life financially. I'm not. So let me go try to take from him and acting like a moron. Hey, I'll clown myself if that means I can get paid money. That's pretty much what he is. So I am happy that this is the way that it went. And I'm not surprised.
No.
Yep.
5'5" is rough.
Yep.
That's rough. When I read the report that came out, and I just couldn't help but hear it in like a ref's voice. It's like after video review, like there was not enough clear and conclusive evidence to Yeah.
And if anything, the report reads, I read through it as you were talking. It reads as if like they're basically saying, yeah, this guy's full of crap. Literally no one corroborated what this guy said. And so we're not going to file charges. I love the part. An inadvertent touching does not meet the standard for what you said he was. So yeah,
that's rough.
Sorry, little fella, you're gonna have to take this and go somewhere else.
I was 5'5" once.
Yep.
Second grade was fun.
Yeah. I think I passed that in the 5th or 6th grade at least. So Yep. And now hopefully this can go. Somebody just made a good point. Now hopefully this can go back to, now everybody can talk about who should really be getting talked about here, which is that a high school wrestling coach physically went after and verbally assaulted a high school wrestler simply because of who his dad is. And, I don't know if he is a coach at New Prairie High School. I know he's associated with them. I know he runs a sort of a travel wrestling camp. Whoever runs those, if you employ this guy, you're part of the problem. I don't call for people to be fired unless, Trev, they are conducting themselves in a way that away from it that deserves it. This guy should no longer have a job. And if you're right. And if he is employed by the sports programs in New Prairie and you do not fire this guy, then I got major question marks about you as an institution and as an athletic department. I'll just leave it at that, and we can move on. Yeah, we can move on. This had me rolling.
Super chat from James Costanzo. Appreciate you, man. Like I tell my wife, it's the finish that matters. Do you envision the offense looking much different next year?
Much different? No. It's still going to be the Mike Denbrock offense. I think the emphasis will be on some things. There'll be some concepts that maybe they didn't run a ton this year that they might run more this next year. There might be, they did this 10% of the time. Next year, they're going to do it 20% of the time. This year, they ran this 35% of the time. Next year, they may do this less. Like they ran a lot more mid-zone this year than they did last year. And still part of the offense. They still ran duo and inside zone this year, just not as much as they ran the previous year. Still the same thing, but the emphasis on it has changed. And I think that'll be, we didn't see quite as many slot fades this year as I think we'll see next year, just because you're not going to throw a ton of slot fades to a 5'10" guy like you would a 6'1" guy, that kind of thing, but it'll still look the same. I think just some emphases will adjust. And the one area where I do hope we see a much different looking offense, I do hope the run game looks different next year. It was not designed well most weeks. It was very generic, very dull. And I think that's an area that needs to get updated, Jimmy, for sure.
Yeah. From Brian Sullivan, do you think Notre Dame had these players signed but just waited to announce until the students returned to campus, let alone the early enrollees from the football team?
I think that was part of the reason they did it. Again, I don't think it's advised. I always kind of think letting things kind of come out over multiple days is better than just all of it coming out within like an hour and a half period. But, that's the choice that they made. I'm also sympathetic to, we don't want these things announced until we've had a chance to sit down. And this part I actually commend. We want to be able to sit down with our players and talk to them about, hey, here's what we're doing before this stuff gets announced publicly. I get that. As a coach, I get that. As a media person, I don't care about that. Well, I do, but you get my point, right? Like it doesn't, but like as a coach, I would absolutely put value in that.
Sure.
Let me sit down and meet. And they met with the team last night. They met with some players last night to kind of let them know what they were doing. And so then they made their announcements today. So that's kind of where we're at.
Good deal.
Yep. So, and again, I don't think they're done today. As I said earlier, I said I think there's at least two. I'm still there. I think there's at least two position players that I think they're going to get over the next, no later than the next 24 hours. So I don't think they're done yet. So Sean Davis and I will be doing a show tomorrow because Trev's got some things he's got to take care of. But we will talk about anything that breaks between now and then and tomorrow's show. And I do expect some things to happen.
From Play Like a Champ, getting excited thinking about sending 5 after the passer on third downs, and those 5 potentially being Boubacar, Bryce, Keon, Logan Thomas, and Sneed.
Yeah, and KBA, yeah. Look, man, this is the big thing for me, Trev, is I just wanted this all to be done so we can start talking about the 2016.
Yes.
And still not done yet. Like I just want it to be done so I can talk about, okay, who's going to be playing D-line for them next year? We still don't know. We know who's going to be at D-end. We don't know who's going to be at D-tackle. And I want to know who the receivers, who are the tight ends, who's the offensive linemen. And to a degree, we still don't know like who's going to be where, but like we know who's in the running back room. We know who's in the tight end room. We know who's in the O-line room. But even then, I still expect some guys to jump in the portal from Notre Dame. I don't think that's done yet. But, I just kind of wanted this to be done so we could know who is on the team, and then we can start in our shows and our articles. Like, we can start talking more about what this team is going to be.
Agreed. I was ready to turn the page. I'm with you.
Yes. Yes.
From I Am Tenzin, we all know Keeley will be an end for Notre Dame. How much weight do you imagine they'd ask him to cut to be the best end possible? 15, 20, more?
He's 282. I mean, honestly, it's not so much to me about just weight. There's a world in which he drops only 10 pounds, but completely reshapes his body, and he's 272, 275, and good. There's also a world in which he needs to get down to 265, 260. And like, because remember when Jordan Patel put on like a bunch of weight in was it 23 season, and then 24 he dropped a bunch of that weight, and he just looked so much quicker and explosive and things like that. Like, that's kind of what I think needs to happen with Keon.
Sure.
And like if he's but he could also get down to 265, but he didn't like necessarily. He put in the work to lose weight, but didn't put in the work to gain more muscle and get stronger and more explosive and things like that. And then it won't matter. But there's also a world where he could get down to 260 and then get back up to 270 because to get the weight off, and then that muscle rebuild kind of gets him back up here. It's more so about a level of reshaping his body, getting more muscular, getting some of the not great weight off of there, and then getting that twitch back. That's going to be the key. Now, what does it take for him to get there? Is it 275? Is it 270? Is it 265? Is it 260? That I don't know the answer to. But, I wouldn't mind just getting 20 plus pounds off of him like in the next couple months as best you can, and then build him back up. But most likely, since he is going into a senior year, it's going to have to be kind of a gradual work it off and then get where you want to get to. With younger kids, it's a lot easier to just drop 20 off of them in an off season and build it back up. The older you get, the harder, as I have found out, the older you get, the harder it is. I mean, I could eat a whole Papa John's pizza when I was in college, like at 11 o'clock at night, and then go in the next morning for workouts, and I dropped 4 pounds. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, now it's like I see a Papa John's commercial and I add 3 pounds. You know what I mean? So it's a little tougher deal.
Yeah. Tom Connor, with several portal players having multiple years of eligibility, does this mean the administration is much more open to transfers?
Tom, I think this is a tremendous observation. Now, Quincy Porter doesn't signify that. He's a freshman. We've always said seniors and freshmen are the guys that they can get in the easiest. But the fact that they can get Francis Brew in, he's a sophomore. He's now halfway done. If they get Mylon Graham, I believe he's kind of cleared the admissions process. He's a sophomore. He's halfway done. So, I mean, there's been multiple guys like that. DJ McKinney's an easy one. That's kind of a no-brainer, like, right? Jaden Sanders is a freshman. That's a no-brainer, right? But like the Francis Brew, the Mylon Graham one, those are ones you look at and say, okay, this is and then that follows Elijah Hughes last year, who came as a true sophomore and was going into his junior year at Notre Dame. So that's now 3 and 2 years of just that right in the middle type of guy that can be a little bit tougher to get in. They've been able to clear the process. So I think that absolutely means that they're more willing to work with the football team in this regard. No, and that's why I kept saying this is not an admissions problem. They didn't get Xavier Gilliam because of admissions. They didn't get Xavier Gilliam because the coach, the general manager in his office dropped the ball. It wasn't an admissions problem. And there were some people kind of going to the, academics and admissions like, nope, that wasn't it. Admissions can't make decisions on information they don't have.
Fair. Very fair.
Can this kid get in? I'm looking into my crystal ball. Why don't you look at his transcripts? You never gave them to me. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Two-parter here from Broke Neck Boy. If there was a decade you can change for Notre Dame that had the biggest negative impact, what would it be? 80s, 90s, 2000s, or 2010s? Changing losses into wins and winning the most championships.
Oh boy. I think I think it'd have to be the 90s. because the mid to late 90s, so like Notre Dame had that great run in like 90 to 93. Like the 1990 team was as good as anybody that year. The 92 team was as good as, I mean, the 92 team might have been Notre Dame's best team of the 90s, with all due respect to the 93 team, as far as just talent stuff. 93 obviously was a great year. Then the next year, they go 6-5-1. And now Coach Holtz recovered and they went 9-3 and 8-3 in his last couple of years, but they weren't the same dominant team. They got smacked by Ohio State a couple times. They just, he lost his first game ever to USC, I think in his last year. Like they just weren't the same team. And so like you can't go with 80s because the 80s started bad, but they ended with a title and a 12-1 season and set the stage for what was to come. But and then of course Davey comes in the 90s and they just kind of go down. The fact that they couldn't sustain what Coach Holtz had built laid the foundation for the next 20 years. And it was mistake hire after mistake hire after mistake hire. And that to me is like the 2000s were bad. The 2010s weren't great. But like that all started in the mid to late 90s when the administration stopped supporting football. They actively worked to undermine Coach Holtz. They hired Bob Davie instead of Barry Alvarez. That period of time is what sent Notre Dame into the wilderness. Not what happened in the 2000s. The 2000s and 2010s were a byproduct of that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So if you can change some of those wins, then and look, and when I mean wins, I'm not just talking about on the field. I'm talking about off the field as well. Allen Iverson doesn't get into legal trouble. He comes to Notre Dame. Randy Moss doesn't get into legal trouble. He comes to Notre Dame. You know, like the Notre Dame coaching staff doesn't drop the ball and take an offensive lineman instead of Javon Curse, who wanted to come to Notre Dame. They don't drop the ball and not push for Jonathan Ogden, who wanted to come to Notre Dame. Right? Like those are things that happened that you look at and you're like, boy, if they would have not screwed up there, maybe things are different, you know? But like you look at like 1993, what happens if Notre Dame doesn't drop their opener against Northwestern? And then, you know, like they were ranked 8th. They lost to Ohio State. That dropped them down to 23rd, and then they beat a ranked Washington team on the road. They beat number 5 USC by 28. They kept winning and winning and winning. They got all the way up to number 6 and then lost in the Orange Bowl to Florida State. Well, what if they win that game? And all of a sudden, you don't win the title because you got smacked by Ohio State, but you're 11-1, you know, or you're 12-1, excuse me, and all of a sudden you're going out and getting in a good recruiting class. The next year, you lost Ohio State again. But what happens if you don't lose to Air Force at home? You know, in overtime. What happens if you don't lose to USC at home in overtime at the end of the season? You know, those are things that you look at and say, boy, those 2 years, if you could have got wins, and then maybe Coach Holtz has more of a say in who replaces them. And then, of course, the next year, the disasters happen. Davey goes 7-6, 9-3, 5-7, 9-3, 5-6. Ty comes in, he has his issues, and you know, you could point to what if they beat UBC in 2002. Smoke and mirrors. It was still a glass house. You know what I mean? Like it was not built for success. You know what I mean? So those are all things that I look at and say the 90s is what set the stage for all that. That's where I'm at.
That makes sense. Before I heard that explanation, mine was going to be easily the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Which I get.
I get the amount of wasted talent that came through that program from 2000 to 2009 is just insane, absolutely insane. But again, I don't know the level of talent that was there from 90 to 99, like I do the level of talent that was there from 2000s.
Sure.
So
sure,
but there had to be an origin of that from somewhere,
right?
And the 90s, that makes sense.
Yep. All right. Good one.
Part 2 from Broke Neck Boy. For the 80s, I'm looking more at the first half than anything. And 90s would be 94 and on, especially the 2 games against Ohio State. I would switch the 2000s because there was a lot of okay ball.
Yeah, like I said, the 80s is, I got to say, that's definitely not in the conversation, because when you finish a decade off as strong as Notre Dame finished, where they were 1A, 1B as the best team in the country with Miami. I mean, in a 2-year stretch, Notre Dame and Miami combined, I think, let me just make sure I have this correct. From 1988 and 1989, Notre Dame and Miami finished a combined, let me just see, 24-1. Miami was 22-2. Notre Dame and Miami combined for a record of 46-3, and only one of those losses was not to each other. Because Notre Dame beat Miami in 88, Miami beat Notre Dame in 1989. The only other one was Miami lost to Florida State in 1989. So, and won the title that year. So, like, you were 1A, 1B, and you were on the verge of something special. And then the 90s, they didn't win another title, but they had some great teams. In 1990, Notre Dame finishes third. They lose the home a road opener in 1990, or that's actually Miami. Hold on a second. Notre Dame did not finish third. That was Miami. In 1990, Notre Dame finished sixth. You lose a home game to Stanford. You lose at home to Penn State. You lose to number 1 Colorado by a point, but you still finished third because you were number 5, lost to number 1, and rose up in the polls because how close you were. That was the game where Rocket had the phantom call. You went on the road, beat number 18 USC. You went on the road, beat number 9 Tennessee. You beat number 2 Miami at home. Like, you beat number 24 Michigan State on the road. You beat number 4 Michigan at home. Like, they were still a great team. 1991 was the down year during that stretch. They went 10-3 and finished 13th. They lost at number 3 Michigan. That's the game where Desmond Howard, had that diving catch and all that. They lost at home to number 13 Tennessee by a point. Lost at Penn State, but still that season, beat Michigan State that year, beat number 12 Pitt 42-7, beat USC, and then beat number 3 Florida in the Sugar Bowl 39-28. And then, of course, 1993, they were a great team, finished 4th. So, like, from 88 to 93, you had 88, 89, 90, 92, and 93. 5 of those 6 years, you finished 6th or higher in the final polls. Your down year was ranked 13th. Like, the early 80s had no impact on that. None. It didn't keep them from doing that. The lack of success from 94 on and the hiring of Bob Davie is why Notre Dame fell so far behind as a program. And they just didn't hire they didn't hire the right coaches in the 2000s that could get them out of that. But they had to recover from that, and they just weren't capable of it. Great question, Broke Nick Boy.
Yeah.
Great question.
From Clyde the Glide 574, is Peter Jones going to be ready this year?
I think I met Clyde. I think this is who I met at Martin's the other day. I think it is. So, Clyde, if that was you, it looks familiar, and I think that your name was Clyde, if I remember meeting you. But so it's good meeting you. I don't know. There's some things I see from Peter when he gets on the field that I like. He struggled to stay healthy. He had I think it was an ankle injury a lot of last year. It's a big kid, strong kid, little tight movement ability. Like, he's definitely a guard. He's got to, he needs to work on staying healthy and his flexibility a little bit. He's gotten a little bit tight since he's been in college. So I'm ready to see him kind of battle this year, no doubt. If he can be healthy, that's going to be the key.
From UELOF, what type of defensive tackle would complement Armell Mukam the best?
I don't know that you need to compliment Armell. I think you need to find guys that can carry out what you want in the defensive system. And, is Armell going to be playing nose? Is he going to be playing 3 technique? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. So who's going to complement him is going to be dependent upon where do you play him. If you're going to put him at the nose and let him be kind of a 6'3", 305-pound disruptive nose, then, you're going to want a guy with some length at the 3 technique that can, do some of those things and be a disruptor and all that. If you're going to play him at the 3, then maybe you want, a Donovan Heinisch type at the nose. Or you could just say, hey, we want to go really big, and we want somebody at the nose. We're going to push Davion Dixon or Sean Sevillano, or maybe they can go to the portal and get a guy like that. But at the same time, I'm also okay with the way that they run their defense of having two guys like Armell, two penetrators, two guys that are, able to get after it that can also hold up against the run. So one of the things I like about what Notre Dame does on the D tackle last year is they had so many interchangeable rotations. You'd see different. I mean, you'd have kind of, this guy's with that guy some, but then this guy's here, that guy's there. And it just depends on kind of what your game plan is. But I don't know that there's necessarily need for a compliment of him. I think what they'd like to get from the portal is a guy that can be a playmaker. And that's why I think there's a push for Francis Brew. And I think there's still a desire to get beef. Like I've said before, you don't need that to be successful, but it's sure nice to have. And so I do think there's still a desire to get a little bit more beef there.
From Jason Rose, does the addition of McKinney and Sanders push Christian Gray to the hot seat?
No. Look, this is about building your depth chart. This is about building your depth chart in a way that allows you to get your best guys on the field, to have some flexibility with where certain people play. I'll just say this. I'm quite confident that what I'm about to say is true. How the Notre Dame coaching staff views Christian Gray is very, very different than how the Notre Dame fan base views Christian Gray. Does that mean Christian Gray is going to stay to the field? I don't know. I think it depends on what DJ McKinney looks like when he gets here. What does he move? I mean, it's one thing to see it on film. It's another thing to see him in winter work. It's like, this guy is cruising. Or, man, this guy's a little stiffer than we thought. And then maybe there's a situation that say, hey, we think he can play nickel. And so we're going to move him to nickel and then have the 2-6-2 guys on the outside. Maybe they're like, look, DJ's best suited as a rotation guy. And so I think all those things are true. And the same thing will be true for the freshmen. How does Dallas Golden perform this offseason? The staff is still very high on Dallas Golden. Are they ready to completely turn the position over to him? I don't know that yet. But, I think those things are going to factor into this. You know what I mean? So the Notre Dame coaching staff is a lot higher on Chris. Now, does he frustrate them at times with not doing what he's taught to do? Of course he does. But what they know, what fans don't pay enough attention to, is they get frustrated by the 3 plays a game where he just doesn't do what he's supposed to do. But they also evaluate the other 63 plays where he's locking people down and lights out. And their thing is, instead of giving up on those 63 plays, their goal is to say, how can we help him to fix the 3 to 5 bad ones a game? Is it fixing his technique? Is it moving him to nickel? Is it playing more zone? Is it playing more man? There's a lot of things that go into that. That's what their focus is on, because they know that when this kid's locked in and doing what he's taught to do, he's elite. He's a day 2 draft pick. I'm telling you, that's what the Notre Dame coaching staff believes. The fan base needs to understand that. And they need to understand is you only really see a corner when he gets beat. You don't see all the other stuff. And that's what the Notre Dame coaching staff loves about Christian, but they also know that they need to fix the 3 to 5 plays where he doesn't do well. And no, how do they get that? That's the thing that I think they're trying to figure out. Is it improving his technique at field? Is it changing the coverage structure? Is it putting him at nickel? Is it, moving him here, letting him kind of play both? Is it playing left, right instead of field boundary? Those things are all going to be parts of the conversation. But what this does is this gives you the depth and the talent to say, we can move people if we need to, but we can also play with a rotation where maybe now Christian doesn't have to play 70 snaps a game, which is going to help him be fresher for a kid who's kind of been banged up with his shoulder the last couple of years. Those things are all part of it.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm with that completely. A lot of it's for depth. And like we said in the first part of today's show, Mike Mickens loves depth and he loves competition. So There's a world where this pushes Christian Gray, not to the hot seat, but it's just to continue to elevate his own game.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm with you.
Yep. I'll tell you this right now. If he's not – okay, let me begin. I have zero evidence that Christian Gray is going in the portal. Everything I've been told is Christian's bought in. So this is for example, this isn't something that I'm worried about. Just want to be clear. let's just say hypothetically that Christian Gray was told, hey, man, the fans don't like you. We're tired of the fans talking about you, so we want you to go to the portal. I'm going to use an extreme stupid example so that people know that I'm not hinting something that may happen. Let's just say they're that dumb as a coaching staff. Hey, man, the fans don't like you. We think it's better for you to go somewhere else where fans are going to like you more. He goes in the portal. I promise you, he becomes an immediate big-time one. He's going to have 7-figure deals thrown at him from big-time programs. I'm telling you, that's how he's perceived in the business. I'm just telling you. Coaches know that for 93% of the time, he is outstanding. And if you can fix the 5 to 7%, he's a dude that is a day true draft pick. That's what coaches know. But I also understand the frustration as fans, like, yeah, you say that, but then he does this. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. That drives the coaches nuts too. It's just they're not going to ignore that other 95% like fans do. They're going to try to fix the 5% to make it look like the other 95%. And that's what Christian's got to do as well.
100%. Super chat from James Costanzo. That super chat is because there is no reason to ever eat Papa John's pizza. Got to have better options that close to Chicago.
Look, man, when you're a 19, 20, 21-year-old college student, okay, working on a budget, those better options are too dang expensive. And when I was eating Papa John's in college, I was living in Salisbury, Maryland. You think there's a whole lot of great pizza joints in Salisbury, Maryland? Answer is there weren't. And if there were, they were at restaurants and I couldn't afford it because I was a broke college kid. So, yes, here, like I would not eat Papa John's here unless I just wanted to get takeout. But the best pizza place for me in town is Polito's over out on Holland Road. My favorite pizza. It's New York style pie. My wife is a she was born in Long Island, family there. She is a snob when it comes to pizza and bagels. Because, it's the best in New York. She loves Polito's pizza. That'll tell you something. So if you're ever in town and you want a pizza, check out Polito's on Holland Avenue. They don't pay me to do this. They're great people. It's a mom running the business with her son. I mean, it's like if you want to support local businesses, definitely check it out. They used to be somewhere else, but their restaurant burned down and they had to move. So they're over on Holland, like right down the street from right off McKinney, over by the Long John Silver, the Dunham Sports. Really good pizza. Love their pizza. I shouldn't be talking about this because right now I'm not eating bread right now, and now I want a freaking Polito's pizza. Dang it.
My go-to spot back when I lived in Elkhart, my family would always get Volcanoes. It's over in Elkhart in the Easy Place Shopping Center. That place is fire.
Is it is it like Midwestern, like tavern style pizza, or is it more New York style?
No,
Chicago
it's like tavern style pizza. But I would always get their meatball subs. They were fantastic. Those and their breadsticks are elite.
That's what I grew up on. Those tavern style pizzas. Yeah. Like the Detroit style. Oh, that's what I grew up on, bro. It's so good.
When it comes to pizza, I'm just not picky. Like I know some people are like Papa John's over Domino's. It's kind of like the same argument with like I hate Coca-Cola, but I love Pepsi. It's like
right. I like Pepsi more than Coke. I can still drink Coke. Yeah. Domino's and Papa John's, I keep trying to tell people which one's better. Well, it depends on the franchise owner. I've had some Papa John pizzas that's garbage, and I've from certain restaurants and other franchises because I believe they're all owned like by individual, like owners, right? Like aren't they franchised?
It's right? Like franchised out, like what Subway does.
I think Domino's is the same way, I believe, and it just depends, like how good is the person that owns it? Do they cut corners? Do they hire people that do things like that? I mean, that's what I think the question is at that point in time. So, but yeah, the only pizza that I don't really like I just can't eat it, is the Chicago deep dish stuff. I'm not a huge fan of deep dish pizza anyway. It's why I would eat Pizza Hut personal pan pizzas, which you can thank the Book It program for that.
Yeah, baby.
But one of my favorite comedians, this guy named Josh Sneed, and he has a thing about the reason he's fat is because of the Book It program. He goes, if you read whatever books or tell your teacher you read 10 books, you get personal pan pizza. But I never liked their like deep dish. I've just never been a big deep dish guy. It's a little too like, I don't know if it's like, is it too greasy maybe? And I definitely don't like the Chicago kind where like the sauce is on top. Like, dude,
Oh, that's
some
Detroit.
dude,
Yeah.
some dude forgot to put the sauce on one time and put it on. There's like, hey, let's lean into this mistake or something. I don't know, man. I can't do that. I'm more of tavern style, like New York style. And I'll have, if the franchise is run well, I'll eat Papa John's and Pizza Hut. I mean, Domino's. You know, I'm not a huge fan of Bruno's.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, I get that.
It's okay. You know what I do like about Bruno's is their cheese is pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm just not a big fan of the bread. The dough's not great, in my opinion. And I don't love their sauce. Their sauce has a little bit of a weird taste, but they put a lot of cheese on their pizzas, and I like that. I'm a big cheese guy.
Super chat from Zach Nichols. Appreciate you, man. Do the cornerback pickup suggests Mike Mickens sticks for 26?
No. What it suggests is that however long Mike Mickens is here, he's going to do the best he can to coach and recruit. I mean, look, I could say, yeah, he's going to stick. Look, Mike Mickens is not out there, someone out there who's always looking for the next job. He is someone, however, that I believe, and this is my opinion, has desires of being a D coordinator, head coach someday, like most coaches do. But he's also someone who's like, this is where my feet are, and I'm going to focus on building up where my feet are right now. And if somebody, if you know, let's just say hypothetically, some big time programs D coordinator left to go to the NFL and they wanted Mike Mickens, do I think he would listen? I think so, because that would be that would be a step up. It wouldn't just be like another DB job. Would he listen to that? I would think so, just like a lot of coaches would, you know. But like Chris Ash may be completely bought into coming back next year, but let's say I don't know, the Tennessee Titans are like, hey, man, we'd like to interview you for a head coaching job. Like, he's not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But what I do know about Mike Mickens is if this is the job he has right now, he's focused on this job right now, and he's going to do the best job he can every day to make his room better and coach the kids up he has. And if something changes a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, then obviously he'll do that for another team. But I don't think that's what it means. It means he's doing his job very well, like he always does. All right, last few. Tyler Ottinger, we're going to address that question you have after the portal closes. So we'll get to that one. Let me see here. Oh, here's a good one.
From Tom Redinger, let's talk about Washington State and Cal quarterbacks. They have had some elite transfers the last couple of years. Any reasons why?
Well, for Washington State, I think it comes down to who their offensive coordinator was. And he's now the guy at Oklahoma. So I believe Arbuckle was also the coordinator for Cam Ward as well, right? Didn't he come from West? Yeah, he was 23 and 24. He was there. So he coached Cam Ward the second year when Cam got better. So I think that's part of it. And found guys that, could kind of run that offense and coach guys up. I think some of it is not luck, but you just happen to kind of get two good players in a row. That's not like they've been doing it for 30 years. Fernando Mendoza, he just was an under the radar kid who got coached up at Cal and developed into a pretty good football player. I think that's really what it boils down to. I don't think there's like some secret sauce that Cal's doing. Who's the other? Do they have anybody besides Mendoza? They've got the freshman kid now that's pretty flipping good, but he was a big time recruit. He was known as a big time recruit. And Mendoza had two different quarterback coaches. Two different offensive coordinators. So, it's not like there was like one guy developed. I just think sometimes that happens. A talented kid goes to a place and it works out. It's not so much there's some special sauce going on.
Agreed. It's being overlooked as a high school recruit and then really taking to coaching and working on your craft. Yeah. And then taking advantage of the opportunity that you have.
Last two.
From Mile High GTB, what is the plan for the backup quarterback spot?
to let Blake Hebert and Noah Grubbs and Teddy Gerard battle for the job.
Nice.
Yeah. And Nicholas Grosh, this is he says your wife is right. It's the water in New York City and New Jersey that makes the dough better. Somebody told me that once, and I was like, get out of here. And then I actually had someone, like, I talked to a guy, I think it was a bakery, a bagel shop, and I was like, man, this isn't true, right? He goes, no, actually, and he explained why that is the truth. And I was like, well, that's fascinating, very fascinating. But yeah, it's the water that I think they get it from like up north or something like that is where it comes in from. It's not like, hey, the water from the Hudson really makes our pizza. It's not that, you know what I mean? So yeah, he explained it to me. I was like, oh, that's, and then I did some research on it because, like, you know me, I'm a nerd. Like, something gets in my head, I was like, yeah, that's actually true. It's fascinating, very fascinating. So yeah, learn something new every day, right?
Sure do.
And somebody said it's the hard water. If that's true, then I need to start making bagels at my house because our well has super hard water. So we had to get like some filter put in, which has actually been worked out really well. But like, man, it was rough. It's rough because I never thought I'd like having well water, but our well water doesn't have that like smell like wells when I grew up, like my uncle's house. But it was very irony and very hard. So we had to get this, I forget the name of it, but they did a great job. But it's this big thing that they put in the basement that filters it out, that helps, like, it was just, I mean, noticeable first shower. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't feel like I'm taking a beating in the shower anymore, you know? And it was always so inconsistent with the smell, and you could smell the iron, and like after 2 weeks, like we'd start getting like red on our, you know, the iron on our thing. And we don't have that issue now. It's so much better. So much better. Last one is, I think it's a good one to end right here.
From Chief Brody, how's your now or never meter looking for a title challenge in 2026? Mostly with uncertainty amidst changes to the sport in the coming years, plus Freeman to the NFL rumors, I think I'm at an 8.
First of all, people in the chat, I know it's a water softener, but I'm trying to remember the specific brand and name, and it's more than just a water softener. It's like this different process, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, but that's why I'm struggling. I know what a water softener is. But thanks everybody. But that's not what I'm talking about. It's like, it's a specific brand. I'll have to look at it because, like, they're local and they do a great job. I mean, it is like, we've used what we would use water softeners on our filter, and it didn't do anything like what this thing does. It's amazing. So I gotta look it up, and I'll tell you guys what it is. But to this question, I'm never a now or never person. Like if they don't win in 2026, does that mean Notre Dame will never win a title? I think that's nuts. I think that's absolutely nuts. You know, let's say they go to the title game and lose, and Marcus Freeman takes the job for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or just something like that, right? Does that mean Notre Dame will never win a title? Well, tell me who the new coach is going to be first. Like, I mean, how can you possibly say that? So, no, I mean, and look, and Notre Dame just signed the #1 recruiting class in the country, and it is special. You're going to tell me that if they don't win it this year and that class sticks together, that they're not going to have a shot to win it again in 27 or 28 or 29? I just think that's no, I just don't. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. Do I think 26 could be their best chance in a long time? Yes, I do think that. I do. I think their chance in 26 could be even greater than their chance in 25. I do believe that for a host of reasons.
You and I see that the same. And to a question that we got earlier, I'm excited to finally turn the page after this week is over and start talking about why those reasons are. I will never say now or never. I think it kind of depends on your lifetime, because Notre Dame hasn't won a title in my lifetime. And sometimes that can feel a little disparaging versus, like, my dad was around for the 88 title. So he looks at it differently, you know? So do I think this is the best chance in 26 that they've had in my lifetime? Yes, I do. For the reasons that we'll lay out, but I will never say never. If I had to put it on a meter, I don't know, a 3 for my lifetime specifically, not never in the history of their program.
Yeah. Or even the next 10 years. Well, it's like, and it's like, see people in the chat, well, if they lose CJ, it's real slim. Well, I mean, Ohio State went through a stretch of period where they had what was it, Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow on a team, and then that was followed by CJ Stroud, and they didn't win a title with those teams. And then Will Howard takes over and they win a title. And then the next year they have a 5-star quarterback and they lose in the quarters. You know what I mean? Like, there's this thought that, well, if they don't win it with this guy, they'll never win it. That may be true for like some programs that get that unique player. But I mean, Miami doesn't win it with Cam Ward, who's a way better quarterback than Carson Beck. And now they've got a shot to win it. So, I mean, there's just too many people that that follow sports that they make things too black and white. Oh, you got to go back to the portal app. Why? They've got like 3 guys that have top 100 talent at quarterback. Coach them up, develop them. You know what I mean? And if there's a guy that's too good to say no to in the portal next year, okay, fine, go after that guy. But I just think people need to calm down and just let's see what the team is. But they're still recruiting at an elite level. They just signed the number 1 quarterback in the country.
Yeah.
Or number 1 team in the country, recruiting class in the country. I don't think now or never is the situation when you're signing like they're signing. There's never been more money flowing into the program from the outside. The support is there. The administration is very pro Notre Dame. So, even if Marcus Freeman leaves after this year, believe me, there's going to be people beating down the door to get to the Notre Dame job because of all those things.
Sure.
Coaches know that they're getting outbid by Notre Dame. Like, they know that. They know who they're losing. They know the talent they're losing to Notre Dame. This from Archer, our Ohio State fan. Ohio State quarterbacks who did not win a title: Terrell Pryor, Braxton Miller, JT Barrett, Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, CJ Stroud. Quarterbacks who did: Craig Krenzel, Cardell Jones, Will Howard. Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yep. So
it's a great perspective.
CJ makes it easier. And that's why next year could be their best shot, because it's year 2 of CJ and year 2 of Chris Ash. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. And to answer your question, Joe Mark, On 3 Rivals ranks them number 1. People said, no, they're number 2. No, that's their industry ranking. They do a composite ranking of everybody, and then they have their own. On their own ranking, they're number 1. And as I've pointed out, they're number 2, I think it's Bama. They're closer to number 7 or 8 than they are number 1 Notre Dame. That's how far ahead Notre Dame is on that.
Great spot to be in. I'm with you.
Yeah, don't suck.
Yeah.
It don't suck.
Sure doesn't. Sure doesn't. Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. But if you are not tired of IB content, and obviously I'm hoping that you're not, IB Nation Sports Beat is going live here in about an hour, and they're talking more transfer portal happenings. They're going to have some things to say about the whole Marcus Freeman wrestling coach debacle, so you're going to want to make sure to tune into that. Like our guy D Masak 2 says, be sure to hit that like on your way out of here, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. But since it's the offseason, like Brian said, we're pretty confident that this will not be the end of the transfer portal happenings, especially here in the next 24 hours. So best way to stay in tune and be in the now, subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian and Sean are going to go live tomorrow to talk more about Notre Dame's offseason, more of the portal stuff, and then I'll be back for Buy, Sell, Hold on Wednesday. But in the meantime, till next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.